Hi, if you want to watch exclusive content with hot girls that you won't watch on YouTube, namely where Naruto roasts Kushina and Mikoto and many other hot girls without restrictions, then visit my Boosty channel at the link in the description.
The war ended long ago and many have already begun to forget the events of those days. But not me. I will always remember how my friends died and enemies. I mentally chuckled sullenly, looking at the full moon that was shining brightly over Konoha and seemed even larger than usual. And they were almost no different from us. Pain was an Uzumaki, like me, and Madara and Obito were Uchihas, like Sasuke. But still, we fought against each other. We fought and I won. But am I happy about it now? Am I happy? No. I am both happy and not happy about the victory, just as I was not happy about the war itself, because I don't understand why war is needed at all. A war that only devastates lands and destroys everything, or almost everything, good in people's souls. Almost everything. Now, 5 years after the war, I often thought this way, and felt that something in my soul had broken. I became withdrawn, unsociable and I was no longer the cheerful and kind Naruto that everyone knew me as. And as soon as I became like that, almost everyone seemed to forget that I was still alive. As if they forgot that I returned from that war. It is true that I am still a little, but it is good that not everyone has forgotten about it yet and not completely. And although I, now living in my own mansion, am not visited by friends who have acquired families, they still greet me if they see me and invite me to visit them, although very rarely. But except for my friends and Kurama, who was the only one who tried to bring me back to my former self, I don't think anyone recognizes me anymore. I even heard a few people talking about me while walking down the street and asking each other if they knew what happened to Uzumaki Naruto. They asked where he went. And I stood nearby, unnoticed by any of them, as if I were just a shadow of myself. Although, perhaps that was exactly how it was now, but for some reason I had long since stopped caring about it. Anyway, I thought a little sadly and jumped off the roof of the store I was sitting on. Having jumped to the ground, I walked slowly along the dark night alleys and streets to my home. But I was not destined to reach my home that day. Suddenly someone's hoarse voice was heard behind me, and I turned around to see who it was that called me. And I saw only a man dressed in a black cloak, the hood of which hid the face of this guy, who, I felt, had little chakra, or he carefully hid it. However, even in spite of this, for some reason a chill ran down my spine, as soon as I heard the voice of this stranger. Yes? I say weakly and reluctantly, not wanting to talk to this guy at all. Do you know where Uzumaki Naruto is now? What do you want from him? It's strange, but when I heard his question, for some reason I wanted to run away, but I didn't do it, I just prepared myself for a possible fight. It's none of your business, the stranger said without emotion and asked again. Where is Uzumaki Naruto? Well, to be honest, he's standing in front of you. I decided to tell him the truth, wanting to run away more and more, something that had never happened to me before. I see, the man raised his head and I saw his scarlet eyes, as if glowing from within, involuntarily taking a step back. So, after all, I was not mistaken. And as soon as the stranger said his last words, my body was engulfed in a fire that came from nowhere. What the? I involuntarily exclaimed, covering my face with my hands and closing my eyes, jumping to the side, and then the fire that was around me seemed to disappear, and instead my body was surrounded by water. Opening my eyes, I realized with surprise that I was in a river, deep underwater, and, realizing this, I began to swim rapidly upward, trying to quickly find myself on the surface. Having emerged, I coughed, because I had managed to gulp down some water, and then I inhaled more air, and only then looked around, trying to understand where I was. And I really was in a river that flowed in some forest. And how did I end up here? I asked in my mind to no one in particular, remembering and knowing perfectly well that I had just been in Konoha. Just been there, and now I was. God knows where I was. Exo, I muttered and, deciding to first get out onto the shore and then figure out where I ended up, I tried to stand on the water with the help of chakra. But I didn't succeed, because for some reason my chakra didn't obey me, and Kurama, whom I mentally asked what was wrong with me, never answered me. After muttering Exo a second time, I swam to the shore, and having finally gotten out of the water, I collapsed on the ground, wanting to rest a little and catch my breath. But I couldn't even do that, because I suddenly felt unbearably hot, and the fox's poisonous orange chakra began to spread throughout my body. "Hey, Ku, what's going on?" I asked my furry friend in my mind, a little scared, but he didn't respond again, and I began to be overcome not only by chakra, but also by panic. I called Kurama over and over again, but he didn't respond, and his chakra spread more and more throughout my body, and soon 3 tails formed on my body from it, and fox ears appeared on my head. "Kurama!" I screamed in pain, and the chakra that slowly but surely began to devour my skin did not obey me, and now I was not just hot, my body was burning, as if it was being burned by fire. But it was not fire, it was just chakra. Fox chakra, Bija chakra. A Bija who for some reason didn't respond to me. He didn't answer, but I kept calling him. I kept calling until a strange weakness suddenly overtook my body and I began to lose consciousness. But even before I finally passed out, I whispered softly, still hoping that Ku would answer me. "Kurama." But the fox never answered, and I lost consciousness, as if I had fallen into darkness. Commentary on the prologue. The next chapter will appear in a week. I don't know how long I was unconscious before I opened my eyes again. I opened them, winced, and closed them again, because as soon as I looked at the white light, everything started to swim before my eyes and my head started to hurt terribly. But no matter how much pain it was, I knew that I still had to open my eyes again, because now I simply needed to do so in order to survive. And I looked at the world again. At first everything was still blurry before my eyes, but my head didn't hurt anymore, but soon I began to clearly distinguish what I was seeing, and seeing the blue sky, and then, when I sat down, the river and the forest, I sighed heavily. Damn it, and I was already hoping that everything that happened to me just recently was just a dream. EXO. Okay, there's no point in getting sad and swearing, it's better to check where I am at all. Thinking so, I got to my feet and immediately plopped back down on my long-suffering butt, which is always looking for adventures on my head, because me, still weak and not having recovered from a faint. Something outweighed me. Something moving. Something that I can move. I suddenly look behind me, almost breaking my neck, and briefly fall into a stupor. What the crap? What the? Why do I have fluffy fox tails? I screamed mentally, almost saying it out loud. Hey, Ku. Ku. Answer me already, you red, flea-bitten rug, why do I have fox tails? And in response, silence. And in this silence I sat and looked at my tails, of which there are 9, and which I can quite confidently control. True, I did not sit like that for long. Soon I managed to grab myself in my, for some reason very clawed, hands and I tried to get to my feet again. And this time I succeeded, and I exhaled a little contentedly, pressing my ears to my head. What? Not immediately fully realizing what I had done, I mentally exclaimed again, clutching my head with my hands and realizing that my ears had somehow become animal ears. Wanting to find out what animal's ears, although I already guessed which one, my ears had become, I rushed to the river and looked at my reflection. But is it mine? A tall young man with blue eyes and medium-length golden hair was looking at me from the surface of the water. It seemed like a normal reflection, right? But that was not the case. The young man who was my reflection had elongated pupils like a cat's. And his hair, although light like mine, was not as spiky as mine, and he did not have human ears, but only red fox ears, and 9 fluffy fox tails fluttered behind his back. And even in his mouth, which was now wide open in amazement, there was something that I had not had before. And that something was sharp fangs. I've really mutated, I said in shock, having had my fill of looking at my new appearance, sitting down again and starting to look at my new clawed hands, each claw on each finger of which was now elongated, sharp, and bestial. How did I become like this? And why doesn't Kurama answer me? Thinking this, I tried to pull myself together again and tried to descend into my subconscious, but it would be better if I didn't do it, because as soon as I tried to do so, my head almost exploded from hellish pain, and someone's memories flashed before my eyes. And whose memories these were, I soon realized. They were Kurama's memories. All of his memories. All of them. Right down to the last ones. He was sleeping on his green hill, which I had once created for him in my subconscious, near his golden cage, which had long been open, when suddenly he felt pain and jumped up sharply, looking around and listening. And then he saw the dark silhouette of a man who said something to him. Something that for some reason I could not hear. And the fox clearly heard the words of this man and came up to him, smiling sadly and also saying something that I could not hear. And then something big and round began to shine near them, and Ku, suddenly looking straight at me, who was like a cloud in this world of memories, quietly said, "Goodbye, Naru," he said, stepping into that glowing thing and disappearing, and his chakra surged towards me, as if sweeping me out of the world of memories. But before I was no longer there, I could clearly see a person unfamiliar to me, whose hood suddenly flew off his face, as if letting me understand who it was. "But this is," I whispered in surprise, looking at the guy who said, smiling at me, "change what was destined and live," and then it was as if I was pushed into the real world. The memories were interrupted, and I fell on the grass, breathing heavily. Having caught my breath, I smiled sadly, remembering what happened to the guy who asked me to change what was destined and live. He lost his parents as a child, then studied with one snake, and then killed his teacher, and then his brother, after which he wished to destroy the village in which he was born. But instead, he became its hero, dying in the war. When he was dying in my arms, he said that it was probably right this way, and that he didn't want to live. But now, somehow, unknown to me, he came to me again and somehow made me into something like a bijou. Or a real bijou. But why the hell, I wonder? And why didn't I recognize Sasuke's chakra right away when I met him in that alley? And where did he take Kuramushka? And where am I now? And how should I live now? Okay, calm down, just calm down. I tried to calm myself down and decided to meditate a little, to sort out my chakra, which had probably changed too. And having done so, I realized that this was indeed the case. My chakra had become different, not human, but... and not fox, not Bija chakra. My chakra was now something in between these two types of chakra, but at the same time it did not harm me, which could mean that I was now neither human nor bijou, but something in between these two types. A fox-human demon. Kitsune, suddenly the name of the ancient fox demons that could turn into people popped into my mind. Oh my, EXO. What does this mean? I'm a kitsune now. Aya. I don't want to be a demon, I want to be a human. Someone, return me to my original state. Oh, okay, I need to calm down and finally understand where I am. After mentally yelling and cursing for about half an hour, I sighed heavily and ran along the river, hoping to meet someone alive, except for trees. But, damn, for several hours I didn't meet anyone, and tired, I sat down under a tree by the river to rest. And I was even starting to fall asleep, when I felt someone's chakra on the other bank. Knowing full well that the owner of this chakra, who was walking towards the river, shouldn't see me, I quickly climbed up a tree, hiding in the foliage and hiding my chakra as much as possible. Fortunately, I could do this and something else, because while I was running, I tried to perform all sorts of manipulations with my new chakra, and I managed to do almost everything I wanted to do. I even completely turned into a fox for a short time, but soon returned to my human form, because, although I ran faster and felt much more in the fox than in my now usual form, the human body was more familiar to me. And now, in this same form, I was sitting on a tree, hiding and looking attentively in the direction where a person unknown to me was going. Although, probably familiar, because the chakra of this shinobi seemed vaguely familiar to me, as if I had known this ninja before. But not having seen him yet, I could not be sure of this, and for now I did not build false hopes that there, on that bank, some former friend of mine was now, and therefore I simply waited for this someone to finally appear from behind the trees. And soon this, or rather this someone came out to the river and stopped by it, looking at her reflection. The girl who came out of the forest was quite beautiful. She had slightly dark skin, long chestnut hair, brown eyes, cute, smooth facial features, and she was dressed in a shinobi field uniform that suited her incredibly. And I even briefly admired this young kunoichi, until I saw what symbol was on the white bandage that was on her head. What the? My eyes instantly began to resemble two small round saucers, because the symbol that was on the girl's headband was the symbol of the clan. Senju. Senju, damn it. But they all seem to have died already, I thought in shock, taking a closer look at the stranger. No. So Oh, eeoo. I know her. I know her, damn it. I know. But why is she alive and young? I exclaimed mentally, even more shocked than before, with all my eyes, which no longer resembled small saucers, but large ones, looking at the alive, young and, it seems, healthy Senju Hashirama. Senju Hashirama, I knew and remembered her as a perky, combative, intelligent woman, who was resurrected by Orochimaru during the war. I knew and remembered, and now I could not believe my eyes, with which I saw her young and alive. No, 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 it can't be, it's not her. I said to myself mentally, but I knew it wasn't so. I felt her chakra and she was familiar to me. This girl who leaned over the river, scooping up water with her palms and splashing it on her face, was indeed Hashirama, the first Hokage of Konoha. But since it's her, then am I in the past? I almost howled out loud, but, albeit with difficulty, I restrained myself from doing so. And, having restrained myself and calmed down a little, I decided to follow, it seemed, Hashirama, to make sure that I was not only not in Konoha, but also not in my time. Senju stayed by the river for a short time, and then, for some reason sighing sadly, she turned around and went back into the forest from which she had just emerged, and as soon as she disappeared behind the trees, I, still hiding my chakra, jumped down from the tree and slowly moved toward the water. And although I was taking a big risk by following the girl right after she left, I couldn't allow myself to suddenly lose her. I couldn't, and, for some reason, I didn't want to, knowing that if I followed her, then perhaps I would definitely understand that I was in the past, and I would understand what was happening in the world now. But even so, I kept my distance from Senju and tried especially not to make noise, following her only on the trail of her chakra. Although, no, I'm lying, pursuing my possible acquaintance, I relied now not only on my sensory abilities, but also on my now sharp sense of smell, my sharp hearing and improved vision, which allowed me to notice any tiny detail in the forest that could indicate that here, in this place, a person had just passed. And pursuing Hashirama, and remaining unnoticed by her, although she stopped a couple of times. Obviously checking whether anyone was following her, I soon came to a rather large village of the Senju clan. And as soon as I felt the chakra of a large number of shinobi, I stopped moving on the ground, began jumping on trees, and even more diligently concealed my presence. And when the girl I was pursuing entered the territory of her large family, I got closer to the borders of their village and, having climbed higher, began to carefully examine the Senjuva possessions, as well as the inhabitants of this village, of whom there were many on the streets. Some of them were doing housework, some were polishing weapons, some were training, some were monitoring order in the village, some were guarding the borders, or to be more precise, they all just lived. It was strange, but looking at the members of this clan, I suddenly felt that I wanted to live next to them. But, shaking my head, I almost immediately drove this desire away from myself. I am not Senju and never was, so there is no place for me in this village. And having driven it away, I continued to watch the members of the Senju clan, and having done so, I saw how a white-haired guy ran up to Hashirama, who was slowly walking through her native village. He, or rather Tobarama, whom I recognized almost immediately, like Hashirama, told her, I heard this with my new sharp hearing, although not clearly, that everything was almost ready. With this phrase, he involuntarily interested me, because I did not know what he meant, but his sister was clearly aware of this, because in response she nodded to him, and sadly, with barely noticeable pain in her voice, but seriously said, well, that's good. Having heard his sister's answer, Tobik nodded and disappeared from my sight again, ducking into one of the houses, and Hashirama, too, soon after, having walked around her clan's village, went into one of the large houses that was near a steep cliff and was most likely located at the very end of the Senju village. Soon after, I got tired of watching the Senju clan people scurrying around their lands, and I, lying down on a branch where I had just been sitting, began to think about what had happened to me and try to figure out what to do now. Although, I didn't fill my head with such thoughts for very long, because I had already thought about what had happened to me a little while I was watching Hashi and was by the river, and I didn't like to think about what to do since childhood and almost always acted at random, which is what I decided to do now. Although, at the same time, I still wanted my actions to lead the world to a brighter future, which was what I and my friends had. So, even at random, I will act prudently and try not to screw up. Thinking so, I soon fell asleep. But my sleep was now so light that, although I was not fully awake, I felt and heard everyone who came quite close to the tree on which I was sleeping, and almost everything that was happening around me, at a distance of several meters. Strangely enough, this did not prevent me from sleeping at all, although I did not see any dreams that night, and I fell asleep when the sun had almost disappeared behind the horizon. However, I was even better off without them. I woke up when the conversations and other sounds that reached me from Hashirama's village even at night did not become loud enough, which immediately alerted me and made me open my eyes and again direct my gaze to the Senju village. "Wow," was all I said after that, seeing that most of the adult Senju had gathered in the center, probably the center, of their village, armed and serious, and clearly ready to fight someone. And although they didn't stand there for long, soon moving in a tight formation to the gates that led outside their village, the feeling that they were going to fight someone never left me, and it only became stronger now, because I knew a little about the events of the past and saw that the Senju squad was led by the leaders of this clan. Hashirama and Tobirama were walking in front of everyone, and they were so gloomy and focused that even I felt uneasy looking at them, but at the same time, for some reason, I understood who they were going to fight and I didn't like this guess of mine. I didn't like it, and I, wanting to confirm or deny it, decided to follow Senju and keep an eye on them, and I did this by moving behind these shinobi, but at a decent distance. Oh, it would be better if my guess wasn't confirmed, I sighed heavily, sitting down on another tree, when the sun just came out onto a practically clear field, onto which, on the other side of the forest, slowly but surely, the Uchihas were coming out, their sharingans flashing. Seeing these two clans, I knew exactly what was going to happen now, and the thought that I couldn't prevent it yet made me feel lousy. Lousy. But I really couldn't prevent the battle between the two great clans, which had already begun. It began when the opponents were still very far from each other. Fireballs flared up above the ground and in the sky above the field, water hissed and wriggled like a snake, a wind blew that cut everything in its path, stones flew and the stems of giant plants soared into the sky. A terrible battle flared up in an instant, but I did not interfere in it yet, remaining only an observer, because I felt that it was necessary. And although people were dying again before my eyes, I obediently sat on a tree branch, as if I was waiting for something, and what I was waiting for, I myself did not know. But at the same time I continued to wait. And in the end he waited. When the battle was no longer as fierce as it was at the beginning, and there were much fewer fighters, Hashirama and Tobirama clashed one-on-one with Madara and Izuna. I also recognized them right away. Before that, they fought not only with each other, but also through other shinobi in their path, and now no one interfered with them, and they, although they did not have much strength left, went wild. But this did not last long, because the opponents, as I said before, did not have much strength, because they had already been fighting for several hours in a row, and soon they were fighting almost without using ninjutsu techniques, but using only brute force, their minds, and their reactions. And if Madara and Hashi fought almost on equal terms, then Tobirama was noticeably pushing Izuna back. Pushing back, but I saw that he wasn't even trying to cause her serious harm, as if he pitied her. Tobirama, of course, pretended to attack the girl seriously, but at the same time all his attacks, which Izuna managed to reflect, were not aimed at the Uchiha's vital organs, which seemed strange to me, because I remembered that this Senju Uchiha didn't particularly like, or rather couldn't stand, red-eyed shinobi. But it wasn't this that soon made me intervene in the battle of the two clans, but something completely different. I saw how another Senju suddenly rushed towards the younger Uchiha, who was fighting the younger Senju, and attacked her from behind, seriously wounding her in the side. The girl screamed, and Tobirama, I don't know why, but suddenly froze, looking with surprise, irritation, and even a little fear at Izuna, from whose wound blood gushed, then at the Senju who wounded her. He froze, like all the other shinobi who fought before this, and only the shinobi who attacked Izuna from behind continued to move, clearly deciding to finish off the girl. Tobirama froze, but I, as if I had received a good, weighty kick in the ass, instantly jumped down from the branch and turned around while falling into a huge, about 10 meters in height, fox with 2, not 9, because I somehow didn't want both Senju and Uchiha to immediately understand that there was an ownerless Kyuubi running around the forest, tails and golden-colored fur, rushed with all my might to the wounded Uchiha, growling to myself that I would tear apart that Senju who attacked her from behind, because I knew that in such battles such an attack was dishonorable. Especially if they attacked the leaders of the clan or their relatives in this way. Having noticed me, the shinobi frozen regained the ability to move, but no longer began to fight among themselves, but began, to my immense surprise, to attack me in a friendly and even somehow joint manner. But, fortunately for me, they, tired, did not really succeed, and I continued dodging their attacks, running further, because I knew that if I did not hurry, Izuna could die, and if she died, everything would be very bad in the future. When I was already close to my goal, I heard Madara scream that he was afraid for his sister, and I saw that Tobirama, who also moved again, but did not even pay any attention to me, suddenly rushed to Senju, who had wounded Izuna, and hit him in the face with all his might with his fist. Bravo! I praised him mentally and immediately stopped, because I was already near the wounded Izuna, who fell to her knees in pain and seemed to no longer pay attention to anything, slowly losing consciousness. Bowing my head, I instantly but carefully threw her onto my back with one of my front paws and, menacingly and loudly roaring at the shinobi of different clans surrounding me, rushed to run away, carrying with me Madara's wounded sister, who urgently needed medical help. Madara's sister, who tried to catch up with me, but fell behind as soon as I left the battlefield and disappeared into the forest, because he could not understand where I ran. And I rushed further and further. I ran to the river, or rather to a small cave that I saw near it. There I could hide with the wounded Uchiha and at least try to save her. Having reached the cave, I treated Uchiha's wound as best I could, stopped the bleeding, but I couldn't completely heal the wounded. I was too weak in Irian Ninjutsu to completely heal a wound like Izuna's, and my chakra was no longer quite suitable for healing. After all, I was now the Kyuubi with a little human addition, and the Ninetales chakra was, for the most part, poisonous and dangerous to humans. So, having patched up Madara's slightly wounded sister and racked my brains a bit, so that she would definitely not die, decided to take the young Uchiha to those who could definitely cure her completely. Well, or kill her completely, but I really hope that this will not happen. At least, I will not allow it. Having decided so, when it got a little dark outside, I again turned into a large fox, this time about 5 meters tall, with 2 tails and, again carefully throwing Uchiha onto my back, I went to the Senju village, taking a great risk, but knowing, well, at least hoping, that Hashirama, of all people, would definitely heal the wounded one. Having reached the necessary village, I did not hide my presence and headed straight to the gate, which was the main entrance to the Senju village. As I had expected, having acted exactly this way and not otherwise, the local shinobi noticed me almost immediately and immediately began to run to the gate. True, so far not with very friendly intentions, Running and running out of the gate to meet me, they loudly and quietly, and also, mostly, not very censoriously swore, at the same time running to the sides and getting into fighting stances, clearly preparing for battle, but so far, fortunately for me, did not attack me. And I kept walking and walking forward, proudly raising my head up, but at the same time threateningly twitching my tails, and ready to run away at any moment if they suddenly decided to attack me. I wasn't afraid for myself, but Izuna could get hurt again if a fight suddenly started, and I really didn't want that. When I approached the gate, I was met there by Hashirama and Tobirama, very tense. I was standing with my face towards them and they, for now, because of my head, could not see the one I brought and therefore were very nervous, which was understandable. Although they were shinobi, they did not see huge 2-tailed foxes every day. Especially twice in one day, What does he want? After I had stopped near the Senju leaders and had been looking at them for 2 or 3 minutes, Toba quietly asked Hashi, without taking his eyes off me. I don't know, she answered him just as quietly. But this beast or demon is here for a reason. Well, yeah, I chuckled to myself and lowered my head to the ground, allowing my brother and sister to see the Uchiha that was resting on my furry back. Izuna? The younger Senju leader exclaimed in amazement, but he did not move from his place. Clearly afraid of me, but his sister, seeing the Uchiha on my back, took a small step towards me, and then, when she realized that I would not attack her, slowly, but still approached me, under the sight of the disapproving and worried gaze of her brother and, probably, most of the shinobi of her clan. Having approached, she at first hesitantly, but still touched my neck, slowly running her hand over my fur, and then, apparently completely convinced that I would not harm her, began to pull Izuna off my body, who for the entire time while she was with me, never came to her senses and was still unconscious. And as soon as she began to do this, Tobarama, who until then was still standing in place, quickly approached her and me, and began to help his sister remove the Uchiha from my body. Or rather, he simply pushed his sister aside with his hand and pulled Azuna off my back alone, carefully picking her up in his arms and holding her close to himself like the greatest treasure. "She's alive," he breathed a sigh of relief, as it seemed to me, or maybe it didn't seem that way, and Kashi, having carefully examined her and touched her forehead, said seriously, "But she is still wounded, although someone treated her. So let's finish off Uchiha." Senju, unknown to me, shouted loudly, threateningly waving the katana that was in his hand. And this idiot was immediately supported, to my displeasure and irritation, by a couple dozen more people. "No," the head of their clan said loudly and commandingly, and all the noisy Senjuki instantly fell silent. "We will not kill her, and we will even cure her." "What? Why?" The dissatisfied ones started to scream again, and their cries were even more furious than before. Things were taking a dangerous turn, and now it was dangerous not only for me and Azuna, but also for Hashi and Tobik, and so I decided to intervene. Instantly straightening my paws and raising my head up, and lifting my muzzle to the sky, I roared loudly. I roared and the clearing near the gates of the Senju clan village immediately became quiet. Having narrowed my eyes contentedly and enjoyed the silence for a minute, I lowered my head again and looked encouragingly at Hashirama, and she, as it seemed to me, looking gratefully into my eyes, spoke again, but now no one was shouting condemningly back at her. "We will cure Azuna. We will cure the sister of the head of the Uchiha clan. We will cure her, not kill her. Enough deaths. Enough deaths of shinobi of our clans. It is time to stop the stupid feud that has been destroying our clans for many, many years. It is time to stop. Stop and move forward. Forward, to a bright future in which we will not fight each other. To a future in which we will live side by side all together, and solve problems together. Enough deaths. No matter how much evil we have done to each other, the Uchiha are the same as us. They are just people. People who also want to live happily. And what is stopping us from living together? Just stupid feud. It is time to stop and start doing good to each other. And the first good that we will do for the Uchiha is to cure Azuna. We will cure her and return her to her brother. Let's return and offer peace to the Uchiha." Hashirama fell silent. She fell silent, looking almost pleadingly at her clansmen, and they, clearly impressed by her speech, began to silently exchange glances with each other. Tobarama, however, looked at them sullenly, holding Azuna even more carefully and tightly to himself, and if I hadn't known him, I would have thought that he had warm feelings for her and was afraid that his clansmen would again demand her death. But I knew Tabika. I knew that he didn't like the Uchiha, and that's putting it mildly. Although, who knows? Maybe he began to hate the Uchiha after Azuna died, whom he now loves? But I had no time to figure out whether my guess was true or not. I was tensely waiting for what the Senju would decide, because our future depended on their decision. And they decided. Most of them decided to agree with their leader. Although, there were those who were unhappy with this arrangement. But fortunately there were few of them. After the announcement of the general, decision to try to establish peace with the Uchihas, Hashi ordered Tobarama to take Azuna to their house and, having ordered the people of her clan not to touch me and to return to their business and to their homes, she followed her brother, and I, to the surprise of all the shinobi gathered around me, having become a small, slightly larger than a cat, two-tailed fox, hurried after her. Following her, I, not stopped by anyone, entered the house of the heads of the Senju clan and ran into the room where Hashirama's fair-haired brother had brought Azuna. He was there, and clearly, for now, was not going to leave this room, looking worriedly at the dark-haired girl who was now lying, still unconscious, on the bed. But Hashi decided otherwise. She, looking menacingly at him, ordered him, as soon as she entered there, to leave the room and not to enter until she gave him permission. I really wanted to go back, he said discontentedly, leaving the room, and I, jumping onto the bed, began to watch Hashirama contentedly, who began to examine and treat the Uchiha. And when she did all this and, smiling at me, left the room, I finally allowed myself to completely relax and, lying down next to the Uchiha and settling down more comfortably on the bed, fell asleep. I was not going to leave Azuna, who was already practically healthy, even at night, because she had not yet come to her senses and was defenseless, and the Senju, who were unhappy with her presence on their territory, as I already said, still remained and were very dangerous for this Uchiha. So, day and night, for now, I will be next to her. It's safer that way. Early in the morning, I, who had had enough sleep, and Azuna, who had not yet woken up, were visited by Hashirama. She did not come empty-handed, but with food, which, as it turned out, she brought not only for the Uchiha, but also for me. She brought me a large dish that was filled with fried meat, which smelled quite appetizing and not dangerous, and she put this dish on the floor near the bed, smiling and saying, "Eat. Well, if you want, of course." And I wanted it. I really wanted it, because I hadn't eaten for 2 days. And so, jumping out of bed, I began to devour the food offered to me with gusto, the taste of which turned out to be no less good than its smell. And while I was eating, Hashi, having placed a small cup of rice on a stool that was near the bed, examined Azuna again, and, nodding contentedly to herself, said, "He'll wake up soon." Well, that's good, I thought with some joy as I swallowed the last piece of meat and jumped back onto the bed, looking at Hashirama with gratitude. "Already eaten?" she said, looking at me in surprise and amazed. "And even ate everything? You're something, Fox." Coo, I half squeaked, half yelped, not wanting to talk even to Hashirama yet, and even less to reveal my true nature, but not wanting to be called simply Fox. "Coo?" Senju looked at me even more surprised, and then, obviously having decided something for herself, looked at me more calmly and said with a smile, "Well, if you wish, then I will call you that. Still, you are not just a beast, but most likely a forest demon, and demons are smart and have their own will and names, and therefore calling you simply a fox was not very decent. But you must forgive me for this, I didn't know your name before, that's why." I didn't let her finish, quickly running up to her on the bed, I touched her hand with my nose, and then rubbed my head against the same hand, and she, clearly not expecting this, fell silent. But she fell silent, not being afraid of me, but, on the contrary, clearly feeling calmer, because before that, I felt it and knew she was still a little nervous, being next to me, because she was still a little afraid of me. And now this fear of hers was gone, evaporated, and she, smiling at me more openly and sincerely than she had smiled before, confidently and completely without fear stroked my head and back, gently running her hand over my fur. "Thank you, Coo," she said quietly, obviously thanking me for my kind impulse. And, looking at Azuna once more, she left the room again, heading off somewhere on her important business. "You're welcome," I said to her in my mind, even though I knew perfectly well that she wouldn't hear me. I knew, but for some reason I wanted to say it out loud. I wanted to, but I couldn't, because I somehow knew that I couldn't do it yet, or rather, that I shouldn't. Not yet. For days had passed since I had arrived with Azuna on my back to Senju's village. Uchiha had come to her senses 2 days ago, and was already feeling much better than after her awakening. And, fortunately for me, she had behaved calmly for now and had not even tried to conflict with Senju, who was taking care of her. True, she had spoken to her a little, limiting herself to short phrases, but that was all, because, in essence, no matter how well Hashi behaved with her, Azuna was still a prisoner of Senju, and prisoners usually don't really like to talk to their captors. But Azuna had spoken to her, at least a little, but she had spoken to Hashirama, and that was good. But Uchiha loved me, as people love pets, and clearly considered me her friend. Although, she had quite good reasons for this, because she knew that it was I who saved her and did not let her die. Hashi told her about this on the same day when Madara's sister woke up. After she heard this, she began, one might say, to sympathize with me, giving me the most delicious food that the head of the Senju clan brought her, and talking to me in the evenings before going to bed, telling me some sad and happy moments from her life, and I silently listened to her, lying next to her and letting her stroke my head and back. And when Azuna finally spoke her mind to her heart's content, she quietly fell asleep, and then I hurried outside for a short while, to breathe fresh air and just enjoy the cool night breeze that played in my fur as soon as I left the house at night. Enjoy it, and then return back to the house to guard the still weak Uchiha at night, who could be in trouble. Guard her and think about why, Waitobarama, who held her so carefully in his arms that day when I brought her to the gates of the Senju clan, Waitobarama, who so did not want to leave the room to which he himself brought her, did not visit her during all these days and tried not to spend the night at home at all? What did not allow him? Did not allow him to even get close to her? Maybe his pride? Or maybe hatred for the Uchiha clan? Or maybe fear that if he sees her, he will not hold back and do what he is not allowed to do now? Well, who knows, who knows? Thinking about it again today, I said mentally and laid my head on my front paws, closed my eyes and fell asleep. But it was the very person I had been thinking about for several days who did not let me get enough sleep that night. Feeling Tobirama approaching the house through my sleep, I immediately woke up and stared with interest and surprise at the window, to which, as if climbing along the wall, Tobik was climbing. He climbed, and soon, nevertheless, climbed, appearing in the opening of the open window, and then jumping into the room. Jumping quietly, as if he was afraid of scaring someone, and then, when I growled warningly, but quietly, he showed me with gestures that he kind of came in peace, and when I pretended to trust him, he went up to the Uchiha's bed and, with care and pain incomprehensible to me, looked at it. So, looking at her, he stood there for about half an hour, and then, as soon as she began to stir, he quickly but almost silently rushed back to the window, from which he jumped out, disappearing into the darkness of the night. True, having found himself on the ground, he did not go far, but returned to the house, but through the main entrance, and then went to his room, where he remained until the morning. And Azuna, after fiddling around a bit more, fell silent again, peacefully snoring in her sleep. Like a fallen angel who was just visited by his devil, I thought for some reason and, yawning widely, fell asleep again. A week has passed since the day Tobik secretly visited Azuna while she was sleeping. During this time, during my short night walks outside Hashirama's house and the Senju clan village, I was able to finally figure out what I can and can't do now. I even figured out why I can't hide almost all of my tails, leaving only one visible, as I wanted to do that day when I rushed to save the wounded Uchiha on the battlefield. Then I was still surprised why I couldn't do it, but now I finally understood what's what. As it turns out, I can't hide 8 tails because I now need at least 1 additional tail to create a shadow clone. Yeah, him himself. And, as I found out later, I, who once created these clones more than several hundred at a time, could now create only 8 clones of myself. But this did not upset me at all, because my current clones were much stronger than my old clones, which dispersed from one blow. And they were also almost as strong as I was now. They could even create small Bija bombs, while I could create a large one and launch them over quite large distances. In general, my shadow discovery did not disappoint me, but even added life opportunities to me. Now, for example, I could calmly walk around the Senju village, leaving my one-tailed clone with Azuna, who could well protect the Uchiha without my help if something happened. That's what I did now, arriving with Hashirama at the council that she herself organized, only occasionally glancing through the eyes of this clone, what my ward, the red-eyed girl, was doing. The girl, who had already completely recovered, and whom the Senju were now going to return to her brother and her clan. And how best to do this, the most outstanding shinobi of the Senju clan and the leaders of this clan were now discussing. They were discussing loudly, even cursing a little among themselves at the same time, because they could not decide how best to do this and how best to negotiate with Madara and his clan about peace between their clans. "I'll talk to Madara about this myself first," Hashi finally said loudly, clearly tired of listening to the bickering of her brother and the rest of the Senju who were present at the meeting. "I'll talk to you one-on-one. Don't you dare." The ash-haired shinobi, unknown to me, exclaimed loudly. "You can't talk to this devil face to face." "He's not a devil, but a man," Tobik muttered in response, clearly fed up with being in the company of these shinobi who were now surrounding him, and then, looking sullenly at his sister, he said, "But you still shouldn't meet him alone or even schedule such meetings with him, because we don't know what to expect from him, who is probably very upset after losing his sister. What if he comes to such a meeting of yours not alone, but with a group? Or will he attack you himself when he finds out that Azuna is with us?" "He's not like that," the girl looked at him coldly. "And I think he'll act wisely when he finds out that we saved Azuna. But even so, you won't go to meet him alone," her brother said and wanted to say something else, but I, lying next to Hashirama on the table at which the shinobi gathered for the council were sitting, and having already listened enough to all the Senju gathered at this council, nevertheless decided to reveal a little of my secret cards now and therefore spoke, interrupting the younger head of the Senju clan, and also greatly shocking everyone gathered with my ability to speak. Yes, she won't go to this meeting alone, because I'll go with her. Nanny? Tobik stared at me in shock, and the rest of the Senju, all except Hashirama, who outwardly remained completely unperturbed, jumped up from their seats, snatching a bunch of stabbing and cutting weapons from nowhere and pointing them at me. Guys, why are you staring at me like I'm the #1 enemy of your entire clan? I asked them sarcastically, standing up on my paws and grinning. I didn't do anything bad to you, I just started talking. And shocked them all with it. Hashi giggled to my surprise, and when I, like the others, looked at her in surprise, she spread her arms out to the sides and said almost carelessly, I already guessed that you could talk, so this didn't come as a surprise to me. Ha, I see, I nodded, and then looked again at the rest of the Senju, who had already begun to calm down. At least, slowly but surely, they had already begun to put away and hide their weapons back where they had taken them from. Seeing this, I mentally nodded to myself and said loudly what I wanted to say. And now, if you, gentlemen shinobi, have calmed down a little, then I will tell you how you can make peace with the Uchihas quite painlessly for both of your sides. And how so? Hashirama's younger brother interrupted me. And what kind of beast are you anyway? Well, I think I'll answer your second question first. Having said this, I jumped off the table and took on my almost human form, and when after that, to my happiness, none of the Senju jumped up from their seats again, I continued speaking, calmly looking at them all. I am the Kitsune demon, or the werewolf fox, and my name is Kurama, but you can call me Naruto, both of these names are my real names. And I'll tell you right away, I'm not your enemy, and not the Uchiha either, I'm myself, but I don't like wars, that's why. So I decided to help you and the Uchiha understand that you are not so different, and that you should finally stop fighting. Will this be my answer to your second question, Tobirama-kun? Yeah, he nodded, having calmed down completely and listening to me attentively, like the rest of the Senju. Well, then I'll answer your first question, and how? And it's all very simple, I'll tell you. First, you have to send Madara a message, in the form of a letter, preferably that you, well, let's say Hashirama, know where his sister is and what's wrong with her and, to talk about it, ask him to come alone to some place, let's say, to the river. He will come to this meeting alone, I guarantee you this, as an expert on Uchiha no Tiki. Although, even if he does come to the meeting with Hashirama, with whom only I will go to the meeting with the head of the Uchiha clan, not alone, he and his people will not be able to do anything bad to Hashika because of me, so everything will be fine. And after the bickering on our side stops, Hashi will explain to Madara that his sister is okay, and that she is currently in the territory of the Senju clan, her clan that saved her when she was injured and almost dead, and who does not intend to harm her. Madara will be amazed by her words and will want proof that his sister is alive and well, and then we will give him the message from his sister that Azuna will write today. After reading it, he will understand that she is okay and will ask Hashirama what she wants in exchange for his sister, and then I will offer him peace. The head of the Senju clan interrupted me, but, in general, she finished my unfinished sentence correctly. Yes, I nodded, looking with a smile at this brilliant and kind kunoichi, and then looked questioningly at the rest of the Senju who were present at the council. Well, how do you like my plan? In general, your plan, Kurama-san, is not bad, but, some unfamiliar black-haired Senju looked seriously into my eyes. But are you absolutely sure that Madara Uchiha will behave as you say? I'm 50% sure of that, but if he does act differently, which is unlikely, we can always improvise quite successfully. I looked at him just as seriously as he did at me, after which all the assembled Senju and I quickly decided who would deliver Hashirama Madara's message, and at what place and time their meeting would be scheduled. I volunteered to deliver her message, and Hashi decided to schedule the meeting with the head of the Uchiha clan for the next morning, near the river, in the place where she and he had met for the first time. No one argued with all this, and so, having wished everyone a good day, Tobirama's sister rushed home to write a letter to the most terrible of the Uchiha, and I, in my human fox form, went to her and Tobiku's house to talk to Azuna about the letter that she was supposed to write, and also in order to show myself to her in my almost human form, because I considered it wrong that the Senju already knew roughly who I was, and the Uchiha, at least one of them, considered me just a forest yokai. Evening came. Hashi, who had locked herself in her room to write a letter, which I was supposed to give to Madara early in the morning, to the head of the Uchiha clan, had not yet left it, well, except for ordinary human needs, and I decided to visit her and, if necessary, tell her what to write. Having decided so, I immediately went to her room, leaving my clone again with Azuna, who madly liked my human appearance, and, having approached the door of the brown-haired girl's room, knocked, very much hoping that she was not asleep yet. And she wasn't sleeping. A few moments after I knocked, I heard her steps outside the door, and then the girl opened the door, appearing before me a little tired, but quite pleased with herself, which I saw from her gaze. "Oh, Kurama-san," she looked at me, a little surprised, but not without joy, opening the door wider. "Good evening. Why did you come?" "I just wanted to ask how things are going with the message to Uchiha," I smiled slightly. "It's quite normal, I'm already finishing it, Kurama-san," she smiled at me more openly than I did to her. "That's good," I said and, wincing, loudly and pleadingly asked her. "But please, stop calling me formally and Kurama-san. I hate prefixes. Call me, I beg you, just Kurama, Naruto or, as before, Ku. And don't say my name every time you say something to me." "Okay," she said, a little embarrassed, suddenly seeming incredibly sweet to me for some reason, and then taking a step to the side, gesturing to invite me into her room. "Come in, let's talk, since you came." I really wanted to do what she asked, but I saw that Senju was already terribly tired and needed to rest alone, and so, smiling apologetically at the girl, I said, "No, sorry, not today, we'll talk another time. I want to rest as much as I can today before tomorrow, which is what I advise you to do too." "Yes, perhaps that's what I should do," she yawned. "And that's what I'll do, I'll just scribble a few more words to Madara and seal the letter." "Well, then I'm going," I said, turning my back to the girl, and then, smiling warmly and looking at her again, I said, "Good night to you." "And to you," she smiled at me just as warmly and I left her, returning to Azuna's room and falling asleep again on her bed in the form of a little fox. I had a hard day ahead of me tomorrow. Early in the morning, taking the letter from Hashi that she wrote to Madara, I went to the Uchiha village, or rather to look for it, because I didn't know where it was yet. But, fortunately for me, a fox demon, it wasn't that hard to find it. I found it by simply following the scent that the red-eyed ones left behind on the battlefield where they fought the Senju for the last time. And only after seeing their village, I, having taken on my human, well, almost, form, and having thrown the hood of the grey cloak that Tobik had lent me over my head, slowly walked to the main gate that led to the Uchiha village. The Uchiha noticed me quite quickly and, jumping out of their village, surrounded me, preparing to attack me at any moment. "I've seen something like this somewhere before," I said to myself, barely restraining myself from making a hand-to-face gesture, and then a brown-haired Uchiha, unfamiliar to me, came up to me and loudly and menacingly asked me, "Who are you?" "A messenger," I answered him quietly. "Whose messenger and to whom and what did you bring?" "I brought a letter for Uchiha Madara, and you are not supposed to know who it is from." I grinned slightly, but that was enough for the Karavlasik to go berserk and activate his Sharingan, which had 3 tomo. "Well, if you don't want to tell me, then I'll find out myself," he said angrily and tried to put me into some kind of genjutsu, but fortunately for me, I was now immune to such things and therefore his illusion didn't work on me, but I wasn't going to forgive him for such impudence and responded to his genjutsu with a light one of my own. Your mother." The master glitch rushed away from me, obviously unexpectedly for his brothers, as soon as I cast the illusion on him that his head was being bitten off by a huge fox that jumped out from behind me. But this half-Uchiha did not run far from me, having taken a couple of steps back and clearly realizing that he had been genjutsu'd, he rushed towards me again, making a terribly displeased and angry grimace. "Oh, you bastard. Well, I'll get you." "Enough, Gansu." Suddenly a commanding, but familiar to me, voice was heard behind the Karavlasik, and he, not having reached me just a little, stopped abruptly and looked back with fear and, at the same time, respect. "Madara-sama, here," Ganju began to report to his leader, when the latter, slowly approaching him, gestured for him to shut up and asked me, "Who are you and why did you come here?" "As I already told this shinobi who is standing next to you, I am a messenger and I have delivered a letter for you," I answered him willingly, respectfully bowing my head, mentally, to myself, noticing that Madara, although he is now young, is already very haggard and that he is surrounded by an aura of pain and suffering, which obviously no one else except me noticed. And, noticing it, I knew why, or rather, why this Uchiha is suffering. "Who is this letter from?" "From Senju Hashirama," I answered him honestly, immediately feeling how Madara tensed up, although outwardly he remained calm. "Well, give me this letter," Izuna's older brother said, gesturing to shut up, immediately hissing with displeasure at the Uchihas who were still surrounding me, holding out his hand to me, and I obeyed him, giving him the message that Hashirama had written to him. Taking the scroll from my hands, Madara opened it and began to read it right away, at first becoming a little gloomy, and then suddenly opening his eyes wide and looking in surprise, then at the letter, then at me, then at the letter again. "What?" Finally, about 2 minutes after that, he asked me, dumbfounded. Is it really possible that Aizu is alive and Hashirama knows where she is and what happened to her? Is it true?" "It's quite possible," I smiled slyly at him, and then, looking closely into his eyes, asked, "Well, so what should I tell Hashirama-san? Will you come to meet her?" "Yes," he nodded, instantly calming down, and I turned around and calmly walked away. Well, the first part of our plan with Hashi went quite well, now it's time for the second part. Hashirama and I arrived at the meeting place an hour before Madara was supposed to show up, but to our mutual surprise, he was already there, pacing back and forth along the river on the opposite bank from ours with a thoughtful look. Impatient as always, with a slight smile, Hashi sighed heavily, having watched the head of the Uchiha clan from behind the trees for a couple of minutes with me, and showed herself to the Uchiha, having stopped hiding her chakra and hiding. I followed after her, slightly wagging my tail, because I had left my clone with Izuna again, just above the ground. "Hello, Hashirama," Madara greeted her as soon as he saw her, and he only looked at me sullenly, saying, "As I see, you came to the meeting not alone, but with a guard." "And you too, Madara," the head of the Senju clan said in response. "But I came to our meeting not with a guard, but with a friend and advisor." "Advisor?" Uchiha looked at me a little surprised. "I would never have thought that you needed such people. Although, perhaps you really don't need him, since you sent him with a letter to my gates today, which was extremely dangerous for him." "It would be if you weren't human," the girl grinned. "What do you want to tell me with this?" Uchiha's gaze became more wary. "Yes, that I really am not a human," I smiled at him and, with Senju's permission, transformed into a fox, the size of a horse. "A fox?" For a moment, a shocked expression settled on Madara's face, but soon he was able to pull himself together again and hide all his emotions, hiding them under a mask of indifference. True, he was now doing it rather poorly. Slowly but surely it became clear that Madara was angry. "That same one. But what is he doing here? And where is Izuna? Wasn't it he who took her away? He stole her and now she is a prisoner of your Senju?" Calm down, calm down, calm down," Hashi raised her hands up in a conciliatory tone. "I will answer all your questions, but only if you calm down." "Calm down? That's great, then. Firstly, Ku is here to separate us if something happens, if we suddenly start fighting. And he is also here to give me some useful advice if something happens. Secondly, Izuna is really with us, on my clan's territory. Thirdly, yes, it was Kurama who carried her off the battlefield. Fourthly, he didn't steal her, he saved her, because without his and my help she would have died, because your clan doesn't have such experienced doctors as we do. Moreover, you almost don't have any at all. And, as I already said, Aizu is really on my clan's territory now, but she is not a captive, she is our guest. Have I answered all your questions?" "Yes," the brunette breathed a sigh of relief, and then asked, "But do you have proof that my sister is really with you now and that she is alive?" "Yes, there is," nodded Hashirama, taking out from her bosom the letter that she had written to her brother Izuna, and, with the help of one light wood ninjutsu technique, handed this letter to Madara. The Uchiha immediately read the message presented to him and, sighing even more with relief, pressed the letter to himself and asked the head of the Senju clan. "And what do you want in exchange for my sister? You have her, but you won't just give her back to me, will you? So what do you want for her, Hashirama, knowing that she is the most precious thing I have?" "I want peace, Madara," Hashi said loudly, glancing briefly at me and seeing how I nodded with a smile. peace between our clans. Mira? Uchiha asked incredulously. Are you making fun of me or are you laughing at me? No, neither one nor the other, the girl shook her head, looking at her former friend almost pleadingly. I am serious. I, like my clan, want peace. Enough fighting, Madara. It's time to forget the past. It's time to just live. Live together. Forget the past? The guy repeated quietly, and then said. Live? Does your clan really want this? Is it really? Is it possible? We've been fighting for so long. We've been living in conflict for so long. Will we be able to? Will we be able to start all over again? Will we be able to just live side by side? I somehow doubt it. And I believe in it, said the head of the Senju clan, and then I decided to speak up again. And I believe in it. No, not even like that, but like this, I believe in it. I growled loudly, but not angrily. I believe and I know, your clans will be able to coexist side by side without fighting. They will be able to build a village in which you will live side by side, protecting your homes from enemies and giving the opportunity for peaceful existence next to you and other shinobi clans. You can do it. You can do it, I believe. Well, obviously impressed by my short speech, Madara smiled slightly and, turning around and walking away, said loudly. In 3 days, Hashi and her tamed fox. In 3 days, my clan, unarmed and with peaceful intentions, will be waiting for all the Senju and my sister near our beloved mountain, Hashirama. And he slowed down for a moment to look back and smile at me and Hashirama. I will really look forward to seeing you there. Both of you, my sister, and the entire Senju clan. I will wait and hope that we can do it, that we will be able to unite and all go together into a bright future. Having said that, he left, and we, Hashirama and I, breathed a sigh of relief and went to the Senju village to tell this clan the good, well, for some, not so good, news, and also just rest and relax a little, but still. We were able to do what we wanted. I did it. But, at the same time, I knew that now everything was just beginning. On the night of the same day that Hashi and I agreed on peace with Madara, I, as usual, left the house of the heads of the Senju clan, and went into the forest again to train a little and just try to find out what else I could do now. But as soon as I started training, which I always began with light gymnastics and strength exercises that Gai-sensei had once shown me, I felt someone's presence not far from me. This someone who was sitting on a tree a few meters away from me definitely had chakra, although he seemed to have little of it, and was definitely not a human, which interested me very much, and so I, hiding my chakra as much as possible, began to slowly creep up on this creature, still unknown to me. A creature that turned out to be a cat. Yes, a cat. A cat that was sitting calmly on a tree branch and looking at me with interest. Just sitting and looking, not doing anything else, as ninja cats sometimes did when they saw someone they didn't know, but who wasn't attacking them. Ugh, cat shinobi, and I already thought that there was someone unusual here, a little annoyed by the discovery of a quasi-ninja, and not some unknown beast or demon. I sighed with displeasure and, once again gloomily glaring at the black animal with red eyes, and also stopping hiding my chakra, was about to leave, when the cat, as soon as I turned my back to him, said, as it seemed to me, somewhat offended. And I'm not a shinobi, I'm a real demon. I've never been insulted like that before. A cat shinobi, pfft. I said in shock, turning around sharply and, just in case, jumping away from the meow. So you're a demon? Well, definitely not a shinobi. Snorted the black and, to be honest, rather large for his kind, cat. I am a purebred demon who is already more than 3,000 years old. And I am also the trusted face of the faceless god, who, by the way, sent you, fox, into the past. So it wasn't Sasuke? I asked the trusted face of some god, just in case. No, the demon shook his head. My master simply took on his appearance to make it easier for you to accept what happened to you. Why the hell did he do that? I asked the cat loudly and discontentedly, because for some reason I suddenly really wanted to punch this faceless man in the face. Why the hell did he send me to the past and turn me into a demon at the same time? My master has the ability to move between worlds and time, and so he, having got to your world, was very upset by what he saw. Blood and despair, despair and blood, and so it was for many centuries in your world. My master did not like this, and he decided, at least a little, but to change the course of events in your world, so that everything here would become at least a little better. But he himself could not influence the course of events, getting involved personally in the course of things, and therefore he found someone who did not like everything that was happening as much as he did. This someone was you, Uzumaki Naruto, and therefore my master decided to send you to the past so that you would at least try to change history for the better. But, being a human, you would not be able to do much, and would not live long, so my master made you a demon, taking the soul of your bijou and sending it to another world, and leaving you the power of this fox. And now my master, seeing that his hopes that you could make this world a better place were beginning to be justified, sent me to you so that I could help you, because everything would only get more complicated from now on, and one other god didn't like that my master interfered in the history of this world, so my master ordered me to become your right hand, to help you in everything and give advice, and also, if that dissatisfied god does something, to help you cope with the troubles and intrigues that he sends on your head. Oh dear, I said quietly, feeling that my brain would soon refuse to digest any information. The last thing I needed was divine confrontations. And I had just started living, so to speak, anew, had just reconciled two clans, and then, here you go. The gods began to conflict over my world, threatening me, poor me, with terrible punishments. As if I didn't have enough problems of my own. Well, not all the gods, but only one is against you and your current actions, the cat purred, stretching. And the second one is on your side, although he cannot help you himself. But I, his tame and loyal demon, can do this, and that is why I am here, and I will help you in everything you need my help in. And even this god, who is against you, will not be able to stop you from making this world a better place as long as I am by your side. But only if you yourself want me to help you. What else can I do? I sighed heavily and walked up to the tree where my new furry friend was still sitting, shrugging my shoulders and spreading my arms out to the sides. I'm unlikely to be able to withstand the disasters that, as you say, that unfriendly god could possibly send to my poor little head and my poor tails. So, I accept your help. Murasame, the red-eyed demon purred again, jumping onto my shoulders. Well, I accept your help, Murasame, I smiled at him, and then asked. And what can you do, by the way? Well, besides the fact that you can give advice? I can do and know a lot of things, the demon smiled in his own cat-like way, sprawling more comfortably on my shoulders. But you don't have that much chakra, I pretended to doubt his words. Who told you such nonsense? The cat said, a little offended, as it seemed to me, glaring at me slyly. I will have more chakra than any other creature in this world, because I can, at any moment, absorb all the chakra that no one living in this world usually notices, and that hovers around us, and use it as I wish. And besides chakra, I have many other types of powers, such as magic and others. So do not consider me a weak kitten, my new friend. Well, I didn't intend to do that, I smiled again. But I was going to do something else. So what? The demon looked at me with interest. I wanted to ask you, since you're going to help me with what I need your help with, to run to the Uchiha village and see what they're doing, preparing for a celebration or a battle, I said seriously. Before you showed up, I wanted to send my clone there, but since you're here, then I'd rather do that than a clone, the cat finished my sentence for me. Okay, I understand you, my friend. Just call me Naruto, I interrupted him this time. Naruto, the cat said contentedly, as if tasting my name, and stretching, he jumped off my shoulders onto the grass. I'll do what you asked me to do and I'll be back soon. How soon? I really wanted to know. Well, wait for me tomorrow. In the evening, the cat meowed and quickly disappeared into the bushes, only his tail flashed, and I, standing in place for a little while, turned around and went back to the village of Senju. It was time for me to return there. Otherwise I had already lingered in the forest, talking with my new ally and friend. At least, for some reason I really wanted to believe that Murasame, this fluffy and smiling demon, was my friend. As promised, Mora returned to me the following evening and unceremoniously jumped through the open window into the bedroom that Azuna and I had been occupying until now. And he didn't just jump, he meowed loudly. "I'm back, my friend Naya." "Who is this?" Aizu asked me, a little frightened, immediately, in the blink of an eye, finding herself behind my back. "My friend, didn't you hear?" I said, smiling good-naturedly, and the cat, not freezing in place and remaining on the windowsill, quickly jumped off it onto the bed, ran along which, climbed onto my lap. I was sitting on the bed, with my feet on the floor, and purred loudly. This, to my surprise, nevertheless made me smile, although at the same time I still asked the cat. "Well, did you find out what I asked you to find out?" Why? "That's great," I said, still smiling, perfectly understanding what Mora meant by a lot of blood. The Uchihas weren't going to fight, they were preparing for a peaceful holiday. But at the same time, I knew, just like the cat, that there would be fights, even small ones. After all, the Uchihas and Senju had been fighting for so long, so there would definitely be skirmishes and fights at the holiday in honor of their peace, but it would only be a little blood compared to what had already been shed by these two clans. It was spilled. But it will not be spilled again in such quantities. Not while I am alive and while I am here. And I will live a long time. If not forever, I thought with a slightly sad smile, and immediately realized that I would definitely have to ask Murasame about this. Ask later, when there would be no one around us again. In the meantime, I decided to forget about this future question of mine for a while, transformed into a small fox and, lying on the bed, watched for a long time as Uchiha played with the demon cat as if he were an ordinary tame animal. She played for a long time and then fell asleep, pressing him to her chest. And Mora purred for a long time as if singing his special cat lullaby, from which soon even I began to slowly but surely fall asleep. 3 days have passed since Hashi and I agreed with Madara about peace, and now, the mighty and great peace day has finally arrived. True, it did not start quietly and peacefully, but hectic, loud and nervous. All the Senju were fussing terribly since the morning, while they were getting ready to leave their village and go to meet the Uchiha near the mountain. They were nervous, afraid that the Uchiha would deceive them and set a trap for them, even though I told them that everything would be fine. They were nervous, but still, in the end, all the Senju left their village in festive white robes and almost without weapons, taking with them only a few senbons and a couple of katanas. They, and I, of course, walked in a chain of 2 people. First came the standard bearers, who carried 2 large white flags with the Senju clan coat of arms on them, followed by 2 guys who had grabbed the katanas, and then Hashi and Tobik, followed by me, Mora, who was sitting on my shoulder, and Aizu, and then everyone else. It's like we're going to a funeral, I thought involuntarily when I realized that everyone in our procession was silent and, to be honest, this thought involuntarily made me feel a little creepy and, in order to somehow cheer myself up, I began to quietly hum the tailed beast's counting rhyme that Ku, Matatabi, and I once composed. "What are you singing?" A few minutes later, Izuna asked me, who, although she was walking next to me, did not hear the song, because I sang very quietly. "Oh, just one song that the children of the village near which I lived for some time sang," I lied a little. "But it's not very interesting." "But you still remembered her now," she smiled slightly. "Why?" "Yes, I always remember all sorts of nonsense when I'm nervous," I answered her, giggling quietly. "Are you nervous?" Hashi looked back at me over her shoulder, but continued walking forward. "A little," I answered her honestly, actually feeling a little nervous even after I sang. "Why?" Senju asked me again. "Well, I'm afraid that everything will fall apart and instead of a peaceful holiday, Senju and Uchiha will organize a bloody massacre," I answered her honestly again. "Don't worry, that won't happen," Hashirama said, smiling warmly at me, stopping to look around and looking forward again. "Everything will be fine." "And why are you so sure of this?" Tobik asked his sister, glancing slightly at her. "Well, I don't even know, even without seeing her face now, I somehow knew that she smiled shyly. I just believe in it and that's it. As if I knew in advance that it would be like that." "And I believe it," Aizu spoke up again. "And you, Ku, believe it, I know. And Mora believes it. And even you, Mr. Skeptic Tobarama-san, believe it too, and I know it too. We all, Uchiha, demons, and Senju, believe it. Well, at least I think so." Well said, girl, said Murasame, still sitting on my shoulder, after listening to her. After all, after hearing you, everyone who could hear you truly believed that everything would be fine and the peace festival would truly be peaceful, and not bloody. What made you think that? I asked him, not without interest. You'll understand it yourself if you listen. The cat winked slyly at me, laying down more comfortably on my shoulders, closing his eyes, and not only I, but also Tobik with his sister and Aizu, having decided to follow his advice, listened and heard. We heard that the Senju were no longer silent. Everyone in our formation, well, except for those two guys who carried katanas, were talking to each other, and some of them were even laughing. In short, our formation no longer resembled a funeral procession, and it never became one. Anyway, Aizu, Mura, Senju, and I reached the mountain, near which the Uchihas, whom Murasame quietly called people in blue, were already waiting for us in quite an elevated mood, and then there was no time to be nervous, afraid, or sad. The celebration had begun. And although it began in a particularly official way with a handshake between the heads of the Senju and Uchiha clans and the signing of some very important papers, there was a feast afterwards. The Uchiha and Senju had built a huge table with food at the same time, during which our peace day became a more solemn day than it had been before, because, after all, at the table, not only the heads of these two clans, but also the rest of the shinobi began to establish friendly contact with each other. Although, during this, it still did not go without excesses. There were a couple of fights, but they died down quickly and without casualties. Bruises on faces and bodies, as well as one broken arm, do not count. After the feast, the real fun began, although, I can say with confidence that drunk shinobi are damn scary. Especially when there are quite a lot of them. After eating and drinking, not juice at all, some of them started singing, some started dancing, but it wasn't scary, it was even pretty cute. But not everyone behaved civilized. Someone started a fight again, someone pestered others offering them their hand and heart, and it wasn't always men pestering women with such a question. There were a couple of individuals who pestered other men with such a pretext, sometimes not from their clan, after which they got punched in the face and went to look for other soulmates. There were also those among the rowdies who started measuring their dicks, that is, techniques, whose is cooler. And the winners of this competition were two, not the drunkest, but probably the happiest shinobi at this holiday. No, I was not one of them. I am not a shinobi at all. These two were Hashi and Madara, whom Mura and I applauded standing up until I was approached by a suitor, whom I sent flying far away with one blow, and then, grabbing a cake and a cat from the table, I climbed the mountain, looking at the holiday and those celebrating it from there. But soon I got tired of it and I lay down on the grass and let Murasame climb onto my stomach and fall asleep there curled up in a ball, and began to look at the stars that had already come out in the sky. Yes, it was already night, but none of the Uchiha and Senju, it seems to me, even noticed it. The day for them, finally happy, flew by unnoticed. However, as for me, why aren't you with everyone? Some time after I left the feast and celebration, Kashi climbed the mountain and looked down into my eyes with some interest. She was standing, I was lying. What are you doing here alone? I'm thinking, I answered her, closing my eyes. About what? She asked, sitting down next to me. Well, about the fact that I'm happy for you, Uchiha and Senju. To be honest, I, lying on the mountain and looking at the stars, didn't think about much, but I had to answer Hashi something, and so, I'm happy for us too. I opened my eyes and saw how she smiled purely and openly, and then looked at me warmly, so warmly that her gaze sent pleasant goosebumps down my body. And I'm glad that you're with us. And I, involuntarily, and I myself do not understand why, but I suddenly became embarrassed and, having stopped staring at Senju, looked at the sky again. And I am glad that I met you. You are good and smart. And also beautiful, like one of these stars that are shining in the sky now. I don't know why, but I suddenly really wanted to say this and I said it, without stopping looking at the stars. Thank you for the compliment, she giggled quietly and lay down on the grass next to me, as if in search of warmth, pressing herself against my side, embarrassing me even more than before. I didn't think a demon would ever say something like that to me. I also didn't think that I would ever tell you something like this, I said mentally, almost saying it out loud, and then I looked warmly at Hashirama and I sighed heavily, but not at all disappointedly, because I saw that the head of the Senju clan, who was curled up in a ball at my side, had already fallen asleep. Some of them can, I thought a little enviously after what I saw and, looking at the sleeping girl with concern for a couple of minutes, pushed Mura off of me, sending him to Tobiku with the news that the head of Senju was returning home, and then stood up and, picking up the sleeping girl in his arms, with powerful and gigantic jumps, fortunately my legs and paws allowed me to do this, rushed to the Senju village. Murasame caught up with me on the way, saying that he had passed my words on to the right people, along the way bringing a couple of Uchihas who did not know who he was to the state of get out, squirrel, and we, already the two of us, not counting the sleeping Kunoichi, together, after some not very long time, reached the village of the girl's clan. Arriving there, I immediately brought Hashi to her home, putting the girl on her bed, covering her with a blanket and leaving her room through the window. I don't know why, but I suddenly wanted to leave the girl's room just like that. Down below, on the street, my pet demon, who did not enter the house, jumped onto my shoulders, and we climbed onto the roof of the house closest to us, Hashi's house, yeah, and stayed there for the whole night, looking at the cloudless starry sky and simply enjoying the peace that was in the air. In the peaceful air, which doesn't smell of blood at all today. == 8. It has to be that way. == A month had passed since the Senju and the Uchiha had made peace. During this time, they had already managed to get along quite well and even, it seemed to me, to forget old grievances, having started to build a new village, in which they were going to live all together. True. Sometimes part of what had just been built was torn down on the same day it was created, but this did not happen because the builders were clumsy, but because conflict still arose between some of the Uchiha and the Senju, which sometimes escalated into fights, during which either houses or even newly built streets were destroyed. True, then they were built again under the close supervision of Hashirama and Madara, who were almost always and everywhere together. And that's not bad, and it would be even better if these two became a couple, I thought, smiling as I looked down from the mountain at the boy and girl who were once again closely watching to make sure that no fights broke out among the members of their clan. But then, for some reason, my own thoughts suddenly hurt me. No, that's not it. It didn't hurt, but somehow, I felt uneasy or something. Somehow uncomfortable and lonely, as if I had just given up something that was vital to me, like air. But why I had this feeling in my heart, I didn't know yet. Or rather, I just didn't understand. What are you looking at so gloomily? Murasame asked me, who had been lying on my lap for a long time and, like me, was looking down on how the future Konoha was being built. Oh, nothing, I calmly answered him, shaking my head and stopping trying to understand why I was suddenly overcome with sadness and melancholy. I was just thinking. About what? What a curious cat. Oh, just about everything in the world, I lied, wincing, and then asked the cat himself what I wanted to ask him a month ago, but kept forgetting to do so. By the way, how long will I live? You, sitting down, the cat made a thoughtful look, and then said. Well, 1,000 years, and maybe more, if you don't die. Does this mean I will never grow old? For some reason this thought made me a little sad. And is this what makes you so sad? The mustachioed demon looked at me slyly. Have you never wanted to be forever young and live a long time? No, probably not, I shrugged, because I really didn't know the exact answer to Mura's question. I've never had time for such thoughts. Why are you thinking about it now? The cat continued to look at me with interest. Well, probably because I'm not a human anymore, and I know that Bijou are essentially immortal, I answered him honestly. And I'm a Buju now, so. Well, you're not exactly a Bijou and you know it yourself, Murasame chuckled. You're a kitsune demon and you won't return to life as a tailed beast if you die. The fox's body will be reborn, but your soul won't. Someone else will become a new fox, someone very similar in spirit to you. And he will also be a kitsune, whose soul will one day leave this world and whose body will be reborn again. I see, I said, closing my eyes, and then my sensitive ears caught the disgruntled shouts and curses of boys and girls. Near the mountain itself, below, children were arguing, and not just arguing, but were clearly about to fight. To make sure of this, I looked down from the mountain and saw 5 children, 3 boys, and 2 girls. 2 boys and a girl were Senju, and the other boy and girl standing opposite them were from the Uchiha clan. And these kids, as I could see even from above, were really about to fight. More precisely, the boys were about to, and the girls were clearly trying to calm them down, but they were not succeeding, which clearly upset them. Shall we separate them? Murasame asked me with a sly smile, looking in the same direction I was looking. Of course, I nodded, grinning, and, putting the cat on my shoulders, jumped off the mountain, not at all afraid of breaking myself, because now falling from fairly large heights was not at all scary for me. My demonic paws legs arms, like my body, were very strong and sturdy, and therefore, landing on them, I did not risk breaking them or breaking my neck when jumping from high above. And now I landed on the ground without any harm to myself, only raising a cloud of dust and greatly surprising the children with my appearance, who, seeing my landing, instantly fell silent, staring at me as if I were the seventh wonder of the world. Look, they've gone quiet, Morris said with a satisfied smile, noticing the obvious, and not falling off my shoulders even when I landed. And before that they were arguing so much. But why, I wonder? I asked the children, not without interest, who, apparently having recovered from their surprise, almost all of them, frowned with displeasure. Only one girl, who was an Uchiha, hid behind a friend or brother, now timidly peeking out from behind his back. None of your business, demon, growled back at me, to my great surprise, that Senju boy who had ash blonde hair and black eyes. Ah, not mine? I grinned predatorily and released a small wave of ki, which covered all the sub-shinobi. Whose is it then? Well. The ash-haired man's arrogance had clearly diminished and he, like everyone else, was now looking at me a little frightened. You. What you? The second wave of ki. I didn't do anything bad just now. I just jumped down from the mountain to you and asked you why you were arguing. And you immediately started being rude to me. That's not nice. The black-eyed Senju said nervously again, and the Uchiha boy, who had clearly already managed to cope with his fear, said loudly. We're arguing because those two, a nod towards the Senju boys, made fun of my sister, calling her weak and a future corpse. But she's not weak at all. Yui is just very young, that's all. And they also said that it was not worth making peace with the Uchiha, and that we all had to be killed, so that the world, you see, would become cleaner. Urids. You yourselves should have been killed. Quiet, said Mura, and the boys who had rushed into battle looked at me again. I heard you, young Uchiha, I said, my eyes flashing menacingly, but without releasing ki anymore, and sat down on my crossed legs. And you're right to protect your sister and clan, but you're wrong to think that all Senju are bad and that they need to be killed, just as these two are wrong to think that the Uchihas need to be mocked and insulted. Hey, you, fox! The ash-haired boy shouted again, having grown bolder. What's wrong with you? You're supposed to be on our side. You're Hashirama's fox. I am my own fox. I bared my fangs and covered the screamer with a rather powerful wave of chi, growling angrily, and the boy, hearing this and feeling my rage, quietly and frightenedly yelped and involuntarily sat down in the same place where he had been standing before. I do not belong to anyone, just like each of you. But I, unlike you, know that war and bloodshed will not solve anything. That's right. Unexpectedly for me, the Senju girl supported me, who had been silently stomping around away from the boys of her clan, and now boldly came up to me and sat down next to me, crossing her legs just like me. I told them the same thing, but they didn't listen to me, unlike you. I said that we should all live in peace and not fight, but they got attached to Yui. Having said this, the girl, who had golden hair and red eyes, sighed heavily, and the boys of her clan seemed to lower their heads in shame. That's right, little one, I smiled at the brave golden-haired girl and stroked her head carefully, after which I said, you must live in peace with each other. Yes, just recently the Uchiha and Senju were enemies, but now everything has changed. Now you are no longer enemies, now you are allies. And you, children, should cherish this even more than adults, because after all, the future is ours, said little Yui, who was noticeably younger than the other children, quietly, coming out from behind her brother, but still holding the sleeve of his blue sweater. Yes, that's right, I nodded, smiling at her too, after which she, having finally let go of the Uchiha boy's clothes, timidly, but nevertheless came up to me and climbed onto my lap. The future is yours and only you can decide what it will be like. Will you be at odds or will you all live together, developing and becoming stronger? It's up to you. But here's what I'll tell you, peace is much better than war. Happiness is much better than grief. And happy is the one whose relatives don't die in war. While I was saying this, the boys, all three, like the girls, came up to me and sat down on the grass near me. And if you, the Uchiha and Senju, live in peace, then you will rarely have to fight with anyone. And if you will be with us, yes? Yui looked into my eyes with her huge black ones. Yes, I said, laughing quietly and stroking the little girl's incredibly curly and black hair, as well as her head, and then, lifting the girl off my lap and standing up, I said, and now, kids, when you, I hope, have understood what I was trying to convey to you, run, make peace, and play or train together. Aha! All five said in unison and together, no longer grumbling at each other. They ran away from my sight, but Mora and I were not left alone for long after that. You're a pretty good diplomat, Madara noted, who came up to me from behind together with Hashi as soon as the children ran away. Of course, I said smugly, turning to him and Senju. I'm a diplomat from God. And you don't have a drop of modesty, the girl giggled quietly, and Uchiha chuckled in agreement. Modesty? I made a thoughtful face. What is it? This is something you've never had, the demon cat meowed sarcastically from my shoulder. And the fur rugs weren't given a say. I immediately snapped at him, involuntarily making not only Hashi laugh, but also the almost always imperturbable Madara. Okay, we'll go, there's still a lot of work to do, the head of the Senju clan said after laughing. See you later. Yes, I said, and the two founders of the still nameless village turned and walked away from me. They walked together. They look good together, Mora noted, who, like me, was watching them go. Yes, not bad, I sighed heavily, again feeling a strange pain in my chest. But you like her, the cat immediately noted that he clearly heard the pain in my voice. Yes, it looks like that, I said quietly and, turning around, slowly walked along the path that led me back to the mountain. But it doesn't matter, because I shouldn't be with her. Because I'm not from this time, I'm not even human anymore. And she should be with Madara, it will be better for everyone. But not for you, the black demon said with sympathy, as it seemed to me, or maybe it didn't seem that way, looking into my eyes. And I, trying to drown out the pain that burned my soul and heart with an effort of will, I said bitterly but confidently. It doesn't matter what happens to me. The main thing is that my loved ones are happy and that there is no war. And my true feelings? I will hide them, drown them out and never show them to anyone, remaining a loyal guardian of Konoha and my friends. It will be difficult, I felt that he wanted to support me and was grateful to him for that. But I'll manage, I said, looking seriously ahead, at the path that led upwards, and the sky. I'll manage because that's how it has to be. That's how it should be. Comment to 8. That's how it should be. The author is going on vacation for 2 weeks, the next 2 chapters will appear on October 29th to 30th. == 9. The Fox's students. == A couple of days after I separated the boys of the Senju and Uchiha clans, these same kids asked to become my students. After Senju and Uchiha made peace, the adult representatives of these clans had no time for raising young shinobi, and the children now learned everything practically on their own. The elders, however, sometimes paid attention to raising their children. But this was not enough, and so the kids, already knowing that I would not harm them, came to me with a request that I teach them something useful for any shinobi. And what about me? I wasn't against it at all, and now for a week I've been teaching quite capable guys what could be useful to them in their ninja life. Well, at least during this week I taught them to walk well on walls, trees, water without using their hands, and also pulled them up in taijutsu, throwing iron, and meditation. And although they could do all this a little, during the war, children grew up quickly, and my oldest charge was only 9, my lessons with them in this direction were not superfluous for them, and today I decided to add another point to their training. Do you know how to create illusory clones? Do you know the transformation technique? And do you know the substitution technique? When I allowed my students to sit down under the tree to rest, I asked them, standing in front of them. Yes. Yeah. Well, of course. Goose. Kirigaya, Tora, Karasu, and Akari answered me. But I'm not very good at making illusionary clones, Yui said quietly. Well, that's not so bad, I smiled encouragingly at her. I knew one guy who was never good at creating clones like that, but he could create shadows in large quantities, so don't lose heart over trifles. Okay, the youngest of my students instantly perked up. She was only 6, Karasu, her brother, was 9, Kirigaya, the brown-haired, blue-eyed Senju, was 8, Tora, the second Senju boy, who had ash-gray hair and black eyes, was 7, and Akari, the golden-haired, red-eyed Senju girl, was 8, like Kirigaya. Well, since you already know these techniques, I would like to offer you training in the field of ninjutsu today. Having said this, I took out from my bosom 20 special pieces of paper, with the help of which it was possible to determine which elements are subject to shinobi, and which Hashirama gave me. And we will begin them with determining the elements that are subject to you. You first, Karasu. The Uchiha boy willingly approached me, and when I explained what he needed to do, he obediently fulfilled all my demands. His elements turned out to be Katan and Suiton. Akari's element was only Futon, Tora's elements were Suiton and Doton, Yui's elements were Katan and Raiton, and Kirigaya had as many as 4 elements, Katan, Futon, Suiton, and Doton, which surprised me a little. At such an early age and 4 elements at once, this happened very rarely in my memory. Usually, children did not have more than 3 elements under their control, and others, if a person had a predisposition to them, appeared later. What else can I say about this? Just one thing, Kirigaya was very gifted, and I immediately knew that he would grow up to be a pretty strong shinobi. Especially under my supervision. Heh. What are your elements, sensei? When all my charges had passed the test, the curious Yui asked me. Well, I only have one, because I'm a demon. Yes, after I became a fox bijou, I only had one element left, and that element was, and my element is Kato. Yes, Naruto is a fire fox, sounded above my head, and immediately Murasame jumped down from the tree onto my shoulders. So big, warm and fluffy. Don't push me, my stray cat, I hissed unkindly in response. Otherwise. So what? The demon made an onion face. I just gave you a couple of compliments, and you immediately want to announce the death penalty for me, don't you? Give compliments to the kitties you run to every night, but you shouldn't give them to me. I said more angrily, while my students were laughing uncontrollably at our squabble with Mura. Otherwise, I really will execute you, drowning you in some puddle in front of everyone. Oh, how formidable we are, the cat said, lying down on my shoulders, contentedly, closing his eyes, knowing that I would not actually do anything bad to him. Straight psh. Shoo, I hissed discontentedly, cooling down. I couldn't stay angry at this narcissistic blockhead for long, and then I involuntarily heard someone sob not far from me, Mura and my students. And if at first I thought that it was just my imagination, then later, having listened more carefully and tried to detect the chakra of the one who was supposedly crying in the forest, and I taught the kids in the forest, at a decent distance from the Quasi-Konoha, I realized that not far from us was Izuna. And I realized that she was really crying. And having realized this, I decided to talk to her and find out what happened. More, I said. Take the boys to the village. Okay, the black demon meowed and, jumping off my shoulders, told the children to follow him and led them where I said, and I, sharply tearing away from the spot, quickly ran to the place where Madara's sister was. And she was on a branch of a tree that grew near the river. She was sitting on it, pressing her legs to herself and clasping them with her hands, and, as if not paying attention to anything around, she was quietly but bitterly crying. Aizu, I quietly approached the tree on which the girl was sitting and quietly called her name, and she, hearing me, shuddered and, as it seemed to me, looked at me a little frightened. Naru? I saw obvious surprise on her tear-stained face. And you? What are you doing here? Well, smiling slightly, I easily climbed onto the branch that was next to the one Uchiha was sitting on. I was teaching a few kids nearby, and then I felt you, and heard you crying, so I came to find out what was going on. What happened, Aizu? It's nothing, the girl muttered quietly, brushing away the tears that had welled up again from her eyes, turning away from me. Everything's fine. Well, I wouldn't say that, I chuckled and whispered quietly. Aizu, you know that I'm not your enemy, but your friend, and you know that I will always help you, no matter what happens, so you can. You can tell me about what worries you or depresses you. You can tell me about everything, and I will help you as much as I can, after hearing what you tell me. You won't be able to help me this time, the girl looked at me again and smiled sadly. But you won't leave me alone until I tell you what happened? I nodded, and Azuna, sighing heavily and looking at the seething river, said, "It's all Tobarama. I'm crying because of him. He, even though we, the Uchiha, and they, the Senju, have made peace, still can't stop hating us, the Uchiha. And especially me, his old enemy. He follows me around like a tail, criticizing my every move and arguing with every guy from my clan I talk to, then he sends me away, accusing me of everything that a living person can be accused of. He pretends to want to help me in this or that matter, then tries to stay away from me, as if I were some kind of leper. He jokes about me, then doesn't even want to talk to me. He hurts me so much that I even think it would have been better if you hadn't saved me then and I would have died." "Don't say that and don't even think it," I said, seemingly understanding why Tobik was behaving that way with the girl, smiling warmly at the Uchiha. "And Tobarama? What do you think about him and feel when you see him?" "I think he's an overgrown idiot with an inflated ego who doesn't notice anything or anyone except himself and his clan." Izuna shouted angrily, thus letting me know that she felt the same way about Tobarama, and that he probably felt the same way about her. Otherwise she wouldn't be crying. "You know, it seems like I can still help you," I grinned slyly, guessing what might be going on with these two. "What?" She chuckled sadly. "You're going to punch Tobarama in the face?" "I don't think that will help." "No, I won't hit him," I shook my head. "I'll just tell you something that will help you." "And what about it, oh great-tailed talker?" Aizu, who had stopped crying a couple of minutes ago while telling me about Tobarama, looked at me skeptically. "And the fact that Tobarama doesn't hate you," I said. He was taught his whole life, to hate the Uchiha and to fight. And he learned it. Almost perfectly, but only he couldn't completely hate one Uchiha. He couldn't completely hate you, and do you know why?" "And why?" she asked me incredulously. "Because he liked you, Aizu," I said to the Uchiha, smiling broadly. "He liked you, perhaps, for a very, very long time, and that's why he couldn't hate you, and now that the need to hate the Uchihas has disappeared, he's trying to get closer to you, but no one taught him to show his warm feelings, and that's why he doesn't know what to do to show you how dear you are to him and how much he needs you. And what's stopping him from understanding what to do is not only the lack of experience that he could get from adults who aren't obsessed with battles and war, but also fear. Fear that you'll reject him, because you've been enemies for so long. And being rejected by someone you love is painful. It's painful, and everyone who loves is afraid of it. After all, being rejected by someone you love is the same as losing someone you love. And losing someone you love is the worst thing that can happen to a person. So you want to say that he loves me and that's why he tortures me?" The girl looked into my eyes in surprise. "Yes, and so that he understands what he needs to do in order not to offend you and hurt you, you must teach him what to do. You must be patient, gentle, and sometimes even fragile, so that he sees that you are easy to lose and becomes more careful, kinder, braver and more gentle," I told her confidently. "And sometimes you will need to be confident and steadfast, so that he understands that you can give him back if he goes too far and become more patient, balanced and smarter. Well, if you want this blonde idiot to be near you, of course. Well, and if you want him to leave you alone, then." "No," she said confidently, jumping from the tree branch to the ground. I want him to be near me, because it's strange, but I need him like air, even though it's not right, because he's a Senju, and I'm an Uchiha. But now that we're no longer enemies, we can be together, right?" "Yes," I nodded to her, smiling warmly again. "Well, then I just have to teach this idiot to show something other than hatred," she said even more confidently, clenching her fists and looking at me, smiling. "Thank you for telling me what to do," and having said this, she quickly ran off towards the village, and I, sadly looking after her, thought that I was much weaker than this girl. She was ready. ready to fight for her happiness, and I was simply giving up on the one I love. I was giving up, and it was becoming more and more unbearable for me every day when I saw her. It was becoming more and more unbearable when she was around. And so, although I will continue to look after Konoha and the peace in the world, I will leave Konoha and her. Having thought so, I decided to do what I had planned today. But first, I still had to say goodbye to Hashi. Say goodbye forever. Equals 10. Stay equals. Returning to the pseudo Konoha for lunch, I walked around the village, mentally saying goodbye to it. Damn, how it hurt me, but still, I had to leave this village, but I couldn't leave it without saying goodbye to it. To it and to Hashirama. Hashirama, for whom I soon sent Mura, to whom I informed my decision, which he did not like at all, for the cat, although he was a demon, did not want to live in the forest at all. But, although he did not like it, he nevertheless accepted my decision and rushed off after Tobarama's older sister, whom I ordered him to bring to the mountain that towered above the almost completed village. And I, when he rushed off after the girl, sighing heavily, climbed the mountain myself and began to sadly look down on the village, involuntarily realizing that I don't want to leave here at all, but at the same time I still can't stay. And it literally killed me inside. It was suffocating, not allowing me to breathe freely. You called me, Naruto? Suddenly behind me I heard a painfully familiar voice, my beloved Senju. For some reason, I didn't notice her approaching me. Although, I didn't even notice how I grabbed myself by the collar of the white and red sweater that I was wearing. I grabbed it as if it were a life preserver that could save me. Save me from the loneliness that I was dooming myself to. Oh, yes, letting go of my clothes, turning to Hashi, I smiled shyly, and my healthy black cat immediately jumped onto my shoulders. And I'm glad you came. Well, I couldn't help but come, because I was invited here by Ketsun Kurama the Great himself, as everyone here has already nicknamed you. The girl giggled quietly, but rather sweetly and cheerfully, coming closer to me and standing to the side of me, on the very edge of the mountain, but not stopping looking at me. And I also couldn't help but come because my good friend and advisor invited me here. I see, damn, how suddenly, for some reason, I was hurt by her words and the realization that I was and would always remain only a friend to her. But I didn't show it, smiling warmly and looking down again at the half-village of Leaf. Well, I'm glad that you consider me your friend. Yeah. No one has called me that for a long time. Well, no one, except my cat. I tried to be a loner until I came to these parts and decided to help you. But now you're not alone. Her voice caressed my furry ears, and I would have given everything in the world, if it were possible, to listen to this voice forever. Now you're one of us. Well, no, I interrupted her, smiling sadly. I did not become one of you, and no matter how grateful you are to me, and no matter how good I feel with all of you, I am a stranger here and I feel uncomfortable among people. I am a wild demon, accustomed to solitude and silence, and I will never get used to life next to people. What do you mean by that? Hashi became wary, fear flashing in her voice. I want to say, Hashirama Senju, that having said this, I looked into her eyes and whispered confidently. That I'm leaving. What? Strangely, the fear, completely incomprehensible to me, was now not only in her voice, but also in her gaze. What? I'm leaving, it will be better for everyone, believe me. My own voice wavered, because I didn't believe myself, but I continued to speak. I'm a demon, and there's no place for a demon. So will it be better for everyone or just you? Hashirama asked me quietly and, as it seemed to me, bitterly, tilting her head forward slightly, so that her bangs hid her eyes. You hate people and don't want to be around us because of that? No, what are you saying? I don't hate people, I just, damn, where did she get that from? Then you should have noticed that all the people, Senju and Uchiha, consider you their friend. The girl raised her head sharply, looking at me with pain and resentment. And if you leave, it will mean that each of us, will lose you. We will lose our priceless friend. And this will be bitter for all of us. It will hurt us, Naruto. Having said this, or rather shouted it, she suddenly, completely unexpectedly for me, came close to me and hugged me from the front, burying her nose in my sweater and only then whispering, "It will hurt me." "And that's why," she sobbed, which completely shocked me. "And that's why I ask you. Stay. Stay here. Stay here with us. Stay here with me." No, I couldn't say that I would leave anymore, and I simply couldn't leave silently, and so, smiling slightly and with care, not giving a damn that someone might see us, I hugged the girl back and said, "Well, I'll stay. I won't leave. I won't leave now. Because no matter how much I want to, I just can't do it." After Hashi convinced me to stay, a week passed, and all that week the head of the Senju clan literally followed me everywhere like a shadow, as if she was afraid that I would leave. And if she had some important business during which she could not keep an eye on me, then she no longer followed me around, but dragged me along with her, keeping me near her under various pretexts, which, to be honest, was, in my opinion, both funny and tedious for me at the same time. But I endured it, because I liked being near Hashi. After all, I really loved her. But today Hashirama let me be alone, not following me from the very morning and dragging me everywhere with her, and now I walked around the half-Konoha in complete solitude, although I continued to think about her, so inaccessible to me and at the same time so close. Hashirama. I did not know what she really felt for me, whether she considered me just a friend or whether I meant something more to her, and this tormented me from the inside, but I endured. Endured, and simply enjoyed at least the fact that she was often near me. Enjoyed and at the same time suffered, because I continued to hide what I felt for her, although it was damn difficult. But I can handle it, I thought, smiling sadly, when suddenly. How suddenly I smelled a scent so familiar and beloved by me from my earliest years. The smell of ramen. "I want it!" I mentally exclaimed, almost shouting it out loud, because I hadn't eaten my favorite ramen for quite a long time, and then I jumped up and quickly ran along the streets towards the smell, wanting to taste my favorite dish as soon as possible. I ran quickly, and my sense of smell was excellent, and so I quickly found myself near a small, rather unremarkable, but, in my opinion, quite wonderful, ramenaya. Having entered it and ordered a portion of ramen with meat, I had a good snack, but I was still a little disappointed with the dish, because this ramen was not quite the same as I liked. Is something wrong? Noticing my disappointment, although I didn't try to show it, a smiling young cook from the Senju clan asked me, "Didn't you like the ramen?" "No, what are you saying?" I quickly assured him with a smile. It's just that your ramen is a little different from what I like. It's a little less than ideal, in my opinion." "Oh, I knew my ramen was missing something," the chef exclaimed in frustration. "No wonder I have so few customers. It seems I am a talentless cook. A bad chef. What are you saying? What are you saying?" I jumped up from my seat, still smiling, and told him, "You're a great cook, it's just that you're a little inexperienced. But I can tell you how to make your ramen better, and at the same time I'll give you some customers." "Really?" The guy looked at me with hope in his bright blue eyes. "Yeah," I nodded and went to the ramenaya kitchen with Nachi, that was the cook's name, where I showed him and told him what I knew about cooking ramen. Yes, old man Tucci's lessons were not in vain for me. Nachi was extremely attentive, listening to me and repeating everything I did, and in the end he managed to cook quite a tasty ramen, which was almost the same as what Tucci-san cooked in his ramenaya. "Well, as I promised, I helped make your ramen better," I said to my new friend with a smile after eating heartily. "And the clients?" He perked up. "You promised that you would give me new clients." "And your new clients are also already on the way," I grinned, feeling the approach of my two great acquaintances. Naruto. Hashi was the first to burst into ramenaya. "There you are." "Yes, I'm here, why not?" I said indifferently, while Nachi bowed respectfully. "Yes, nothing," the girl exclaimed, and then breathed a sigh of relief, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "Oh, nothing," Madara consplayed her, entering ramenaya with Mura, who was lying on his shoulders, after her. "It's just that Hashi wanted to invite you for a walk with us, we had some free time, but, having found only your cat, she couldn't find you in the places where you usually go, and so she panicked. Oh, our Kuramushka has left us, and combed almost our entire village, dragging me along with her. And here we are. Are you going for a walk? Haven't you had enough fun yet? I asked him sarcastically, trying very hard not to laugh, and Kashi, blushing as a lobster, crossed her arms over her chest, pouting, demonstratively offended. A walk is a rest, and sports exercises are not a rest. Sitting down next to me, Uchiha sighed heavily. And running around the entire village in search of a fox is a sports exercise. Well, so, are you coming with us? Well, if we don't run, I chuckled, while Hashi also sat down next to me, but on the other side, and Murasame jumped from Madara's shoulders onto my lap, curling up on them. And if you have a bite to eat at this ramenea first. I don't like ramen, Madara immediately muttered, frowning, but then, seeing how Nachi, who had already stopped bowing, and I were looking at him pleadingly, he sighed heavily and said, but if you ask me that much, then I'll probably eat one small plate. But in the end, he ate not a small plate and not one, but 3 large full plates of ramen, and Hashi ate 5 of them, declaring that she had never eaten anything tastier before, and after that we still went for a walk. Let's go for a walk together. Comment to 10. Stay. I'm back. The next chapter will appear in a week. == 11. A name for the village and a home for the fox. == Having left Ramenea, which I had already come to love, I, Murasame, Madara and Hashirama, wandered around the village for a while, climbed the mountain and stayed there, looking down on the Quasi-Konoha and simply talking about everything in the world. We even managed to discuss the weather, when suddenly Hashi asked Madara, me and the cat. Guys, what should we name the village? What do you mean? Madara didn't immediately understand what he heard. Well, the common village of Senju and Uchiha is almost finished, or rather, although new buildings and, possibly, streets will appear in this village, it is already finished, and therefore it needs to be named somehow, said the girl, looking at the village. But how? What would you like to name her? I asked her right away, not letting Mura and Uchiha say a word. Well, I don't even know, Hashi said, smiling embarrassedly, looking at me and Madara with the demon cat, and then, as if remembering something, she exclaimed. Although, no, I know. Let's, as the creators of this village, or rather the heads of the clans that created it, and the demon that helped them with this, call this village, Konoha. It's somehow too simple, the red-eyed man winced. I like it, I grinned, and then, looking slyly at Uchiha, I asked him, but I wouldn't mind hearing your version of what we should name the village. Well, Madara said, clearly confused, and then, turning away from me, he muttered. Well, so be it, let it be Konoha. Yes, Konoha, I nodded, and then, looking again at Uchiha, who was clearly pouting at me and Hashi, I said, and it will be a big and strong village. But just. Any strong village must have a leader, and since our village belongs to more than one clan, this leader must also have a name. And how so? Kashi asked me. I don't know, I immediately shrugged, knowing full well that this was what our red-eyed friend with Hashirama should say. And you, Madara, do you have any ideas on this matter? Well. Turning back to me with Mura and Hashi, Uchiha made a thoughtful face, and then said, I think that the leader of this village should be called Hokage. And he also said that I came up with a simple name for the village. Hashirama chuckled with a smile. If you don't like it, then, Uchiha was clearly going to get particularly offended at me and Hashi, but I didn't let him do it. We like it. I exclaimed with a wide smile and even wagged my tails a couple of times for emphasis. The village is Konoha, the leader of the village is Hokage, these two names seem to be made for each other. But just. What's wrong now? The owner of the Sharingan looked at me, not without interest, but already warily. But who will be this Hokage? The cat spoke up, asking what was needed for me. I know. Senju explained immediately, even, as it seemed to me, without thinking. It will be Madara. Why me? Uchiha was taken aback upon hearing her, clearly not expecting such a statement. Because you will be a good leader. the girl said without a shadow of doubt in her voice. Well, I think so. I think so too, I nodded with a smile, deciding to support her, and Mora did the same, purring approvingly. But, the brunette wanted to object to us, but I interrupted him again. No buts, I said, looking at him seriously. You will be a good leader, I believe in it. You are smart, reserved, brave and fair, and also, although you do not try to show it, you are kind, and all these qualities are the qualities of a true leader. But if you do not want to be one, Hashi and I will not force you, although this will greatly upset us. Well, after a short silence that formed immediately after I finished speaking and stared intently, like Hashirama and Murasame, at the Uchiha, Madara said, closing his eyes and smiling slightly. I won't upset you. He whispered quietly, and then, opening his eyes, said loudly and confidently. I will become Hokage. Cool. The demon cat, whom everyone in, now, Konoha considered my pet animal, and who did not really object to such a general opinion, immediately shouted loudly and joyfully. Cool. Great. Not exactly, I smiled and said at the same time as the Senju girl, after which we stayed on the mountain for a while, and then went back down to the village, where I was about to leave Uchiha and Senju together with Mura, who was lying on my shoulders as usual, when suddenly they grabbed my hands and, saying in unison, "Come with us," dragged me somewhere along the streets of Konoha. True, they didn't drag me for long. After dragging me along a couple of streets, they stopped on the outskirts of the village, which was not far from the mountain on which we had just recently sat. We stopped at the outskirts of the village and near a two-story house, which was clearly built quite recently, at least, I didn't see it here last week, and near which my students and Azuna with Tobarama stood, smiling. I don't understand, what kind of house is this and why are you guys all gathered here? I asked them all, not understanding at all what was going on, finally being let go by my friends. This is your home, Hashirama answered for everyone. Yours and Mura's. You stopped spending the night at my and Tobarama's house a long time ago, even when we got our own house here, so I thought that you shouldn't live on the street, like you've been doing lately, sleeping on the roofs of other people's houses, and I built you a house using wood technology, and Azuna, Madara, Tobarama, and your students decorated it and brought furniture into it. And now, having gathered here together, we give this house to you, really hoping that you will like our gift and that you will live in it. After all, do you like it? Yes, to say that I was shocked is to say nothing, because I was completely in shock. They all built a house for me. For me, a demon, a house. Yes. It seems that I really do mean something to them. I calmed down and thought so, involuntarily smiling, involuntarily becoming emotional, and then quietly said, "Thank you all for this wonderful house. Thank you very much." "You're welcome," Madara said to me in response, smiling broadly and openly, something he did quite rarely, and we, all of us, went into my new home to celebrate my housewarming, because, as it turned out, those guys had even prepared food and drinks for this moment. And we celebrated until late at night, after which my guests and friends, almost all of them, said goodbye to me and went home. Only Kashi, to my surprise, stayed with me, falling asleep on the sofa in my new living room. Well, I smiled involuntarily, seeing this, when I went out to see Madara off, who left last. She was not asleep yet, I whispered quietly, and then, covering the girl with a fluffy blanket and, unable to resist, kissing her on the forehead, I went upstairs to my bedroom, where I sat down on the windowsill and, opening the window, which was quite large, began, together with Murasame, to look at the stars that were burning brightly in the sky. That night I couldn't fall asleep for a long time, although nothing tormented my soul, I just couldn't sleep and, looking at the stars, I thought with warmth about those who were now next to me and who really considered me their friend. And I also thought about Hashi, who slept in the living room of my house, and was closer to me than ever. But at the same time, for now, she was still too far from me. But it didn't bother me, because I wanted her to be happy, and no matter what she chose, I was ready to accept her choice and just be with her if she didn't choose me. Because I have now completely fell in love with her. Commentary on 11. A name for the village and a house for the fox. Next chapter, maybe, will appear this weekend. == 12. Uzumaki. equals 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 equals. 2 months have passed since the day I got a house and Konoha got its name. During this time, the village hidden in the leaves has grown decently and became the official shinobi village of the Land of Fire, whose leader became the Hokage, the first Hokage Madara. Many ninja clans began to move to Konoha, and a decent number of ordinary working residents also came running. Local shinobi, who now wore forehead bands with the Konoha sign, began to be given ranks and monetary tasks. And I. And what about me? I lived in the village hidden in the leaves, being here some kind of a local symbol of peace and guardian of Konoha. Yeah, that's right, although some people started to consider me some kind of local deity, which irritated me a little, because I didn't aim to be a god. I don't need that. I'm a simple humble fox. Still hiding who I really am, I sighed heavily, looking at the sky, lounging on the roof of Ramanea Nachi, which had become quite a popular establishment, since it was often visited by me, the Hokage, his sister, the Hokage's right-hand Hashirama Senju and her brother. What are you talking about? Murasame, who had been lying calmly on my stomach and even seemed to be dozing, immediately asked me. Yes, so, I thought that I'm just a lying demon who doesn't want to trust one of his secrets to anyone, even his friends, I answered him, closing my eyes. You mean that you still haven't told anyone that you are the nine-tailed? The demon cat drawled lazily, yawning. Does that really bother you that much? Well, it's not that it's worrying, I said hesitantly, looking again at the gray clouds that were slowly crawling across the sky, merging into one big one. I've just been feeling a bit uneasy lately, so I'm trying to figure out what's wrong. I'll tell you what's wrong, Mora meowed. It's too calm, that's what it is. It can only be that calm before a big storm. Do you think so? I asked him, sitting up and picking him up in my arms, as he was about to fall off me. Yes, the red-eyed black cat nodded seriously, and then, smiling slyly, purred. Or maybe you're just bored, so you're messing around, digging into yourself and those around you. Probably, I chuckled, not going to deny it, because I really have been a little bored lately. Well, I don't like it when nothing interesting or unusual happens. And then, as if someone had read my thoughts, something happened that was not usual for the current Konoha. I felt chakra. Someone else's chakra, but it was not this that made me widen my eyes in surprise, but the fact that this kind of chakra was, for some reason, familiar to me. But not so familiar, as if I had already felt it and met its owner, but as if this person, whose chakra I felt, was for me. Native. Was my relative. What the hell, I said involuntarily, never having felt anything like this before. Is something wrong? Mora immediately perked up. I feel someone else's chakra, but at the same time all my senses tell me that this person is related to me by blood, I answered him, and then exclaimed. But this can't be. Why can't it? The demon grinned slyly. It's quite possible. At this point in time, as far as I remember, Konoha began to take small steps in cooperation with Uzushio, which means that it's quite possible that someone from Uzumaki has visited Konoha now and it was him that you sensed. And you recognized him as a relative, because you're no longer a human, and demons sense their relatives. Although, you're not an experienced demon yet and therefore you can be mistaken and this person is not your relative and not even an Uzumaki. But, in any case, I must see for myself the stranger who visited our village, I said seriously, standing up and placing the cat on my shoulders. And if he is Uzumaki, I must greet him myself. Just hide the chakra that you haven't shown to anyone before more carefully, Murasame advised me. Otherwise, many Uzumaki are good censors, better than censors from other clans. Yes, you are right, as never before, I nodded, taking advantage of the advice of the black demon cat, and rushed to run in the direction where there was a person unfamiliar to me, but quite possibly a relative. And since my paws and legs were fast, I reached the place where the stranger was, quite quickly and, squatting on the roof of the building, began to look with interest. The red-haired girl, who, desperately breaking free and loudly cursing, was being led somewhere by the Uchihas, who were guarding the lands of Konoha today. She is clearly an Uzumaki, Mora, like me, having looked at her more closely, noticed, and I did not argue with him, because I agreed with him 100%. She was an Uzumaki and therefore I had to help her, and also greet her, and therefore, having decided to do so, I jumped down in front of the Uchihas, who, upon seeing me, respectfully and reverently bowed their heads to the ground. "Where did you manage to catch such a beautiful and young girl?" I asked them, simultaneously complimenting the red-eyed girl. "Not far from Konoha, Kurama-san," the Uchiha who was closest to me and was clearly the leader of the squad answered. She was snooping around nearby and was clearly sniffing something out, and so we detained her to find out her goals. "Well, I'm sure that it's the Kunoichi who is looking at me now as an enemy, because she clearly understood that I'm not human. She wasn't going to do anything bad," I said, smiling sweetly and really looking angrily at me, slightly wagging my tails, the girl and the Uchiha, and then asked Uzumaki, not even hoping to get an answer, but knowing that it was necessary. "Right? I won't talk to the demon about what I was going to do," she literally spat out, but it only amused me. "Well, what about the local leader?" I asked her, laughing quietly. "With him, yes," she nodded seriously. "Well, then I'll take you to him myself," I said, after ordering the Uchihas to let the girl go and return to their business, and when they unquestioningly carried out my order, I said, still smiling. "And don't even think about running away from me. I'm a demon and therefore I'll quickly catch up with you, if anything, and I'll easily find you if you suddenly want to hide from me. I understand that perfectly well myself, and that's why I didn't even think about running away from you," she muttered. And then chuckled impudently. Well, I almost didn't think about it. After that, I, who had stopped grinning, and my ward headed towards the Hokage residence, which had been built quite recently, but which Madara, periodically overwhelmed with important papers, almost never left, but did not complain about his position. It seemed that he even enjoyed digging through the documents. While I and Uzumaki, who never told me her name, were walking towards the residence, she was constantly turning her head in all directions, looking with interest at everything that came our way, and, noticing this, Mora told me that she was somehow terribly curious. "There's nothing unusual about that, my friend," I said with an important air. "All Uzumaki are terribly curious by nature." "Hey, how do you know that I'm Uzumaki?" The girl immediately interrupted our conversation. "I saw people of your clan and even knew a couple of Uzumaki, so I know how to distinguish you from other shinobi," I chuckled to her in response, smiling slightly. "And, if you want, we will talk about this some other time, but for now, we need to interrupt this conversation, because we have come to the place where the Hokage is probably already waiting for you, who has probably already been informed about you." Having said this, I was the first to enter the residence and quickly proceeded to the Hokage's office, near which I stopped, opened the door and let the girl into the office first, entering it after her, exclaiming at the same time. "Hey, Madara, welcome the guests." "Oh, Naru." Distracted from some document that he had been reading with great interest, "I told you he liked it," he looked at me and the Uchiha girl. "You finally brought her." "As I thought, you've already been informed about her," I chuckled, unceremoniously landing on the table where he was sitting. "How could it be otherwise?" he grinned, shrugging his shoulders, and then looked seriously at the red-eyed girl and asked her. "So, who are you?" "I am Uzumaki Akari, the youngest Hime of the Uzumaki clan," the girl introduced herself, bowing respectfully. "Uzumaki? I immediately saw surprise in Madara's eyes. Well, he had heard of the Uzumaki, he himself once told me about it, but he clearly did not expect that he would ever meet at least one of them. "And what brought the Hime of this powerful clan to the gates of my village?" "My father sent me here. He wanted to learn more about such an unusual village as yours and, if it suited his taste, to conclude a peace treaty with you," Akari answered him, stopping her bow. "I was supposed to observe Konoha and its inhabitants from the sidelines, and then send my father a message with a full report of what I saw. But your shinobi turned out to be quite attentive and soon caught me." "And that's bad?" the red-eyed boy asked her, not without interest. "No, that's great," the girl chuckled. "Weak shinobi wouldn't have been able to catch me, and your shinobi are clearly not weaklings, they've proven it. And the people of your village don't indiscriminately kill all strangers who appear near Konoha, which is also only a plus in their and your favor. And I hope that I'm not a prisoner here and will now be able to study Konoha from the inside. Will you allow me to do this, Hokage-sama?" "Yes," the Uchiha grinned. "And I, Uchiha Madara, will personally give you a tour of my village, if you don't mind." I'm all for it. The girl smiled slightly and they left the Hokage's office, and Mora and I did the same, but we left through the window, not wanting to disturb these two. And that same evening, Akari sent a message to her father with a hawk, and the next morning she received a reply from him. The Uzashikage wanted to conclude a peace treaty with Konoha, and so he headed here. And Konoha began to prepare to welcome the guests. == 13. Two Scarlet Demons, or I Know Who You Are. Arriving in Konoha a week after Akari's appearance in the Leaf Village, Uzashikage and his retinue stayed with us for 3 days, during which time he and Madara came to an agreement. They agreed that peace between their villages would be concluded through the marriage of the Hokage to one of Uzashikage's daughters. And although Akari and Mito's father initially insisted that Madara become the husband of his eldest daughter, Uchiha did not want this, persuading Kage Uzushio to allow him to choose his own wife, and Uzashikage, leaving Konoha, left both of his daughters in the village hidden in the leaves for a month, so that it would be easier for Uchiha to choose the one he would take as his wife. The girls who remained in Konoha showed their difficult character from the very first days. Akari almost killed Madara. It was his own fault, he shouldn't have entered her room without knocking when the girl was changing clothes, and Mito began to educate Hashirama and Azuna, imposing her fighting beliefs on them: beat guys, growl at everyone, chase demons, and chase me and Murasame, trying to pull our ears and tails, because of which the cat and I often began to disappear in the forest, hiding there from this fighting woman. A week into their stay in Konoha, these two Scarlet Demons, as all the villagers of the Leaf Village called Uzumaki, did something that almost made the entire village hang themselves. They threw a bachelorette party. And it would be fine if they got drunk on their own, but they also got Hashirama, Azuna, and several other kunoichi from different clans drunk. After which the drunken squad of girls went for a walk around the Leaf Village, chasing and driving everyone who was not female crazy. But the worst of all, however, was me, Mora, Madara, and Tobarama. Madara almost got his hair cut, Tobarama almost got killed, Mora almost got squeezed to death, and my tails almost got torn off. And, as a result of this, all 4 of us fled into the forest and hid there, hoping to survive until the next morning. We didn't sleep all night, anxiously listening to the noise and explosions that came from the village. But Konoha, fortunately for us, survived that day and that night. True, the Uzumaki clearly didn't become calmer. Their next prank was their attempt to